There are memories that remain vivid even after more than a decade, like the moment 25-year-old Damien first stepped onto the battlefield. The very first moment he had to take a human life. The second when blood splattered onto the tiles in deep crimson drops. And the time he wiped out over 2,000 enemy soldiers. And then his breath slowly grew shallow, until finally his body collapsed to the ground. The scene then shifted to a bright morning at the town hall. The cold-faced, red-haired boy stared at the contract, sitting opposite a middle-aged man and another person who wouldn't stop rambling. The gist of which was that his uncle would manage all the inheritance money left by his parents after their passing. "If you've checked the documents carefully, please sign here," Fern urged his nephew with a facade of kindness. "That's right, Damien. You've looked enough. There's no need to overthink it. Just sign it, and it'll all be settled." He leaned his chin on his hand, coaxing the boy with a smug grin. "You can rest easy and leave everything to me. Once you're of age, I'll return every single penny without fail." Damien's fingers tightened slightly on the paper. Remembering that this was the very day his life was turned upside down, Damien ripped the contract to shreds and coldly declared, "I will only receive the insurance money through the Imperial Bank, and it must be held solely in my name." Fern stared in shock at the flying scraps of paper. "What do you think you're doing?" Damien added indifferently, "And make sure to add a special clause. If anyone else comes to make a withdrawal without my proof, signature, or documentation, it is strictly prohibited." His gaze was firm and resolute, leaving no room for refusal. Fern was so angry his hands began to tremble. In a fit of rage, he grabbed Damien by the collar and shouted, "What kind of game are you playing? You brat. Just sign the paper and stop making things complicated." Expecting the boy to apologize, Fern was caught off guard when Damien smirked and muttered to himself, "I was worried he'd try to act nice and brush it off." Before Fern could finish his outburst, a punch flew out, sending him sprawling across the floor. Damien said with a smug sense of satisfaction, "Thanks, Uncle. It's comforting to see you still have that same miserable face I remember." As soon as he turned around, the man shrank back in fear, hurriedly scrambling to dig through his bag. "I can add the additional clause documents right now, I swear." The current situation left Damien lost in thought. If this were the past, he would have been 13 and unable to do anything. But he smiled with amusement, knowing everything was fine now because he had been reborn into the past. Alone, Damien had to drag his exhausted body across a battlefield littered with corpses. Panting heavily, he cursed under his breath. "Damn it! I told you from the start this was a crazy operation." As the captain of the Baroque Kingdom's penal unit at that time, he could only grit his teeth in frustration. How could a mere 100 soldiers wipe out an army of over 2,000? Suddenly, he coughed up blood, and his vision began to blur. Weakly, Damien reached out toward a fallen soldier, helping him close his eyes to rest in peace. Regret flooded his mind. Even though the operation was a success, Damien fell to his knees in despair before his comrade's body, whispering, "I'm sorry. If only I had been a little stronger, I could have protected you all." Unable to accept it, he punched the ground hard. Damn it all. Damien stumbled while clutching his side, his body barely able to hold on any longer. As he swayed in midair, he wondered if he was finally reaching his end. His dirty iron helmet was tossed into a corner. Powerless, Damien lay flat, leaving his fate to destiny as he covered his eyes, which were brimming with tears. Was it just because he was dying that his head was filled with so many thoughts? If he had enlisted earlier instead of waiting until he was 25, maybe things would have turned out differently. A hot tear rolled down his cheek, and Damien bit his lip just once. If only heaven could give me one more chance. I would lead these guys to dominate the battlefield together. But now it's too late. In his past life memory, Damien took his last breath, thinking that was truly where he had died. But luckily, a miracle happened, and unexpectedly, Damien had returned to the past. And it was 17 years ago at that. He looked at his smooth hands that had never experienced the trials of life and death, then lifted his shirt to check his lower abdomen, where the magic core, the most important thing for a battle mage, was located. Completely different from his past life, Damien's current magic core was still perfectly intact, and in this life, he could teach himself how to master his mana. Still, Damien felt conflicted. In his past life, After his uncle cheated him out of his insurance money and kicked him out, he had been forced to live in hiding and do all sorts of menial jobs in the underworld. An orphan abandoned by his guardian, he even had to serve jail time for the crimes of a street gang member. He thought his life was over when he was forced to enlist and sent to the front lines. Yet, even someone like him had lived to see this day. Damien foolishly threw himself onto the soft bed, never dreaming he would one day rise above the position of captain. He concluded with a bored sigh, though eventually he had just ended up dead anyway. As Damien was lost in a tangle of thoughts, quiet footsteps suddenly drifted from outside. Though his time in the military was always, he carefully jumped out of bed. An uninvited guest? Damien warily grabbed the knife from under his pillow. The person outside slowly pushed the handle. The moment the door creaked open, Damien lunged like a wild beast, catching the assassins off guard. He powerfully plunged his weapon into the thigh of the nearest one. As a man screamed in pain, he immediately pulled the knife out. Damn, only managed to stab it halfway in. The remaining assassin reacted quickly, roaring like a madman as he rushed forward. "You bastard! I'll kill you." Damien nimbly dodged the first blade. The deranged assassin tried to follow up with another strike. He ducked to successfully evade it, then delivered a stab right into the flesh of the enemy's leg. A flash of bloodlust and sharpness flickered in Damien's eyes. "Who sent you here?" The two strangers lay sprawled on the ground, screaming in agony with stabs in their thighs. Damien grabbed the last one by the neck and held his knife up as a threat. "Did Furker send you?" Seeing he wasn't going to answer, he gave him another jab. "I asked, did Furker send you?" While he was at it, Damien suddenly heard someone bad-mouthing him from afar. "That brat is really scary." Turning around, he saw someone walking toward him. Mukman walked in like it was his own home and said, "Did I introduce myself yet?" Damien thought to himself, Mukman appearing here meant he was dealing with these strangers, but seeing a better target, he decided to make his appearance. Damien smirked and started to tell a story. So, 17 years ago, in the alley of a small street, Damien was grabbed by a group of strangers, and he struggled violently, screaming, "Let me go. It hurts." Even though he had hidden in this slum, being caught so quickly was truly strange. They kicked him hard, handcuffed him, and dragged him away. Damien still held onto the image of Furker's greedy face, realizing his capture had been part of the man's plan all along. The more he spoke, the harder Damien pressed the knife into the man. He stood up slowly, pointing his knife straight at Mukman and saying, "That bastard, he dared to sell me out, huh?" Mukman's eyes looked back at him, filled with an indescribable hatred. Without another word, he charged forward. Damien's quick reflexes allowed him to dodge the attack. His speed also left Mukman a bit shocked. His composed expression made the man even more unsettled, and Damien thought, was Mukman always this weak? No matter how fast Mukman was, he couldn't touch a hair on Damien's body. He felt smug. "I have a very special ability. It's quite irritating to be attacked and never hit." Mukman yelled, "You brat." Damien was busy thinking. Having endured thousands of beatings and died 100 times over, he had finally begun to see through every one of his opponent's moves. Impatience was clear in the man's eyes, and the moment the enemy moved to strike from his gaze, Damien traced every gesture, where Mukman planted his feet, the angle of his waist, and the movement of his shoulders. Waiting for the strike, he had already predicted it 10 seconds ago, so he dodged even more smoothly than necessary. It was all crystal clear that he was aiming for the head, leaving Mukman furious yet powerless. The more the man lost his cool, the easier he was for Damien to predict. This little rat is too obvious. Luckily, he managed to grab Mukman's wrist, and the sword flew far away. Without his weapon, Mukman was at a disadvantage. He wanted to blow up the whole castle, because there was no saving the situation now. The bastard was hit with an elbow to the ribs, leaving Mukman with no strength to resist. He couldn't believe it. No way. No matter how I look at it, he's just a brat. How could he? Damien was annoyed, so he pulled the knife out to make him suffer. Mukman could only look up and moan. He's clearly only 13. He used the coolest expression he could muster to ask, "Want to know how I blocked that?" Damien smugly held up his knife. "It's nothing big. I just saw everything you were aiming at. The moment you lifted your hand, I had already guessed it all." Mukman's face turned deathly pale, And hearing that, he was so angry he could vomit blood. What kind of nonsense is that? Without letting him speak further, he pointed his knife at his face. Believe it or not, it's the truth. With his last bit of strength, he had to try one more bluff. Mukman used a psychological trick. You think I'm the only one? If word of this gets to the others, don't come crying when you meet someone even tougher than stone, Damien. I'm about to die here anyway. How would you even spread the word? Conversely, he used the opportunity to fish for information. You're a clever one. Surely you understand what you should do, right? Did Furker send you? Like the others, Mukman wouldn't utter a single word. Damien said with a half-joking tone, if you don't want to be a cripple for life. The man still couldn't believe his eyes. Was this look really from a 13-year-old? Damien's blood-red eyes also made him terrified. Finally, Mukman opened his mouth to admit. That's right, Furker hired me. Just as he said that, Damien shouted for him to shut up. All right, that's enough. Mukman was still confused. What? Then, a simple slash from Damien made him look like a chicken being slaughtered. Damien walked away coldly. That's right, even if I have to leave, I still have to clean up the mess. He thought to himself, living until 30, one of the few things he learned was to minimize making enemies. But if there happened to be an enemy, he had to stomp them into the ground so they couldn't get back up. At a small house deep in the woods, Montaker looked at his watch and guessed. It should be all done by now. Furker seemed to be holding a grudge against Damien. Bastard, just wait. Montaker was still proud. Once I'm done, I'll drag him here, don't you worry. He was talking to the man like it was nothing. To capture a brat, they had to mobilize him? It seemed he was really losing his mind. Furker slammed the table, his face bruised. It's because of that bastard that I'm so agitated, he said, feeling a throbbing headache. Wait. He stopped talking and turned to reassure. It will all be resolved soon, so please wait a little longer and don't try to use my slight delay as an excuse to cut my pay. Just as he finished speaking, the door was pushed open. Monitor thought, he's here. Furker was getting restless. I want to chop him into pieces immediately, but the insurance contract is a problem. He thought furiously, once that contract is settled, I will deal with the brat properly. Just as the door opened, a knife flew in, and Montaker frowned. What is this? The knife stabbed straight into the ground. Furker was terrified at the sight. Montaker realized something was wrong. Did they fail? Damien walked in confidently, and the man asked, Are you Damien? He replied friendly. That's right, lackey. Being called a lackey made Montaker wonder. Damien glared at him and said, Aren't you just a lackey for the fat pig standing behind you? That's why you so obediently follow his orders. Montaker shouted at Furker. He's blatantly stealing money from him. I have to triple my reward. Furker yelled, Triple? I just negotiated with Furker. Since my side suffered such heavy losses, that's only natural, isn't it? He drew his sword, intending to deal with Damien. Montaker's years of observation kicked in. Do you see the bloodstain on the end of that stick? He raised his sword and faced Damien without fear. It seems there's a variable I didn't account for. Furker's face turned ghostly pale. The price made his heart sink. But seeing his hesitation, Damien feigned impatience and made a motion to sheath his sword. Then I'll be taking my leave. Witnessing that, he panicked. Wait! Furker stood frozen in his spot, his eyes filled with hesitation and fear as he stared at Damien opposite him. At that moment, a dense, suffocating pressure radiated from the boy, choking the air in the room. After a fierce inner battle, he finally gritted his teeth and made a decision. I'll pay triple. Even though his heart ached for losing a large sum of money, he had no choice. If Damien left, he was a dead man. Seeing his plan to squeeze the price had succeeded perfectly, Damien gave a satisfied smile. Sealing the deal, he put on an innocent face, shrugging nonchalantly as if he stood outside the conflict. My subordinates were handled, but I don't have any personal grudges. It's just business. Damien didn't care about the formality, looking at him with cold eyes. But I have a grudge because of your lot. The savage shouts of those men still echoed in his ears. You brat. If I catch you, you're dead. The pain that went through his bones, tearing at both his body and soul that year, was something Damien would never forget, even in death. The first half of his life was spent like trash in the slums, and his magic core was shattered to boot. From that dark moment, he had sworn to take revenge at any cost. There was no way he would let this slide easily. His hand tightened around the spear. So don't ask for reasons, just die. Being looked down upon with such arrogance by a junior hit Damon's ego hard. You brat. The sharp spear tip suddenly changed direction, pointing straight at a dangerous spot between his opponent's legs. This vicious move terrified him, and he didn't dare take another step. That bastard, he's aiming for my legs. He really isn't a pushover. Damien immediately entered a combat stance, both hands gripping the spear straight. The sound of weapons clashing rang out sharply, echoing throughout the walls of the room. Facing the rapid sword attacks, Damien was forced to retreat constantly to break the pincer attack. Realizing his opponent was defending, Damon played a trick. The moment he was distracted defending his face, a perfect vision of victory was already mapped out in his head. I'll slash his thigh. Damon's other hand shifted, gripping the blade to prepare for the killing blow. Just as he calculated, Damien tilted his head to dodge the direct punch. He put all his might into a strong stab, aiming straight for the boy's thigh. This is the real move. But the event that followed deviated completely, making Damon's heart skip a beat. Swoosh! With just a light, graceful movement of his feet, he easily dodged the sword. The trick of using the dagger in the right hand was the real attack. Damien utilized the end of the spear, hitting hard against the vital pressure points all over his body. He glanced indifferently at the one frozen in shock, mocking, I knew it from the start. Damon's jaw clenched so hard it creaked. Damn it, you brat. The veins on his forehead and temples pulsed, and saliva sprayed with every bestial scream, I'll kill you. However, the threat was yet to end when a wave of intense pain hit him. Successfully hitting his throat, the acupuncture points just struck by Damien's spear suddenly tore open, and the strength in Damon's entire body dissipated. He looked coldly at the defeated man, collapsing pathetically at his feet. You might be stronger than the likes of Mukman, but in the end, you're just a common thug. After finishing off the obstacles in his way, he moved his gaze to the real target of this trip. Seeing the entire horrific scene, Furker was shaking uncontrollably. Damien, let me explain. Ignoring the useless rambling pleas, he stepped closer and closer. The fear of imminent death made him lose his mind, waving his hands frantically at the air. Don't come over here! A desperate scream echoed throughout the dense forest and vanished into the quiet night. A long time passed since the night of that bloody event, and in a quiet office, a voice spoke. Mr. Damien, I will proceed to deposit a total of 6 platinum coins and 650 gold coins into your account. The first thing Damien did after cleaning up was to collect the insurance money. He checked the clauses in the book carefully and replied in a low voice, I understand. Finishing the necessary procedures, he stood up and bowed politely. I'll leave it to you. The man opposite quickly placed a hand on his chest, bowing back respectfully. Yes, thank you for your trust. Watching his back, the man hesitated for a moment, as if debating something before asking. I don't know if I can ask where you're headed next. The carriage you're taking looks like you're going quite far. Damien had no intention of hiding or covering up his future plans. I intend to join the military. This direct answer was completely beyond his expectations. Join the military? He confirmed the other hadn't misheard. That's right, because there are a few people I need to meet. On the empty, deserted dirt road, there was only the sound of carriage wheels rhythmically hitting the ground. Damien sat inside the carriage, watching the scenery recede behind them. Thinking about the events of the past, his lips curled into a nostalgic smile. My comrades are there, but after all, the army is the only place I belong. Anyway, in just 5 years, the situation will completely change. Most young men would be forced to enlist. A chaotic war that no one could avoid was already approaching. Damien slowly placed his hand on his chest, the excruciating pain of his past life suddenly flooding back. Now, the incident where his magic core was shattered in the slums would no longer happen. Before making this decision to enlist, he had spent quite some time weighing and considering everything very carefully. Instead of waiting until the late age of 25, volunteering to enlist while still young like this would be far more beneficial. For now, I'll head to the capital to train for a week using the black mana manipulation method, and then I'll apply to the 3rd training camp. Damien tilted his head back, his deep gaze fixed on the vast sky through the carriage window. This time, I won't be tossed around by the era like a spinning top. He was determined to break the chains of fate with his own hands and take control of his own path. A week later, the sturdy city walls and the soaring watchtowers of the capital finally appeared before his eyes. The sound of a spear wrapped in rough cloth, striking wooden targets, echoed with dull, heavy thuds. The soldiers and onlookers nearby couldn't hide their astonishment. What's up with that kid? He's barely out his diapers. So where did he learn to use a spear like that? Damien paid no mind to their whispers. His entire focus poured into every movement of his spear. He retracted the weapon and looked down at his palms, which were once soft but had torn from overexertion. Do I need to bandage this up? He clicked his tongue in frustration. His body was still too frail. Damien felt annoyed and uncomfortable with his current weakness, a far cry from the calloused hands he possessed in his previous life. A man who had been watching for a while couldn't hold his patience any longer and cleared his throat to initiate a conversation. Are you here to apply as a soldier? Damien stopped his movements and turned around politely. Yes, that's right. Damon skipped the tedious pleasantries and went straight to the point. Your spear technique is quite something. Where did you learn it? A sense of high alert rose in Damien's heart. Did he recognize the kingdom's first spear technique? The kingdom's first spear technique? The name sounds a bit funny, but it's the most common spear style used by the kingdom's soldiers. His sharp brain instantly kicked in to find a reasonable excuse to brush it off. This is a spear technique passed down to me by my late father. Damon felt like he had intruded on someone's personal family matters. I spoke out of turn. Please forgive me. Damien stood still, his entire demeanor radiating integrity and resolve. It's nothing at all. Since I was young, my father was always proud of the military, so I was influenced by him and decided to enlist. His mature behavior and noble ideals earned him full marks in the other man's eyes. You're in. Damien blinked in confusion and asked, Pardon? Damon was startled to realize he had let slip something he shouldn't have. No, imispuka. To cover his awkwardness, he clumsily shifted the conversation. By the way, what's your name? He stood at attention with military posture, hand behind his hip, and clearly introduced himself. I am Damien. Damon smiled with satisfaction and stepped forward, patting his shoulder firmly as an encouragement. All right, I wish you good results. Watching the man's retreating back, he bowed his head slightly and called out, Thank you, sir. As soon as the surrounding space became quiet again, Damien suddenly froze. He felt a warm, smoldering heat spreading from his dantian throughout his entire body. This feeling, Damien couldn't suppress his emotions and broke into a beaming smile. Now I can use mana. The mana accumulation technique of the Delph House was a secret manual created by a Delph genius 15 years in the future. The conditions to learn it were extremely harsh, but it was famous for being the most effective method in history. Familiar and warm memories from his previous life flashed through Damien's mind. Because his mana core was shattered in his past life, he had practiced it desperately, clutching onto a fragile hope that it might work. Images of his comrades appeared in his memory, one of them scratching his head foolishly. Captain, why do you keep banging your head against that training method? Even the person next to him had the same question, shrugging along. You can't use mana anyway, right? Teased by his subordinates. He glared at them with sharp eyes to intimidate them. What was that, you brats? A light breeze blew across the training ground, bringing Damien back to reality. He used to be teased like that back then, but it truly wasn't in vain. The emergence of mana helped reduce the anxiety in his heart by half. Now he just had to pass the exam. Damien stopped training and scanned the vast training ground, seeing a group of people gathered and chattering in the distance. He walked slowly toward the crowd, wondering to himself, I wonder if he used to be at this third training camp? Damien smiled slightly at the thought of his comrade in arms from years ago, his heart full of anticipation. He wondered what he looked like now. In the middle of the vast training ground, the applicants were arranged in neat rows. The first test was to carry a rock. It sounds simple, but hoisting a 30 kilograms block of stone over your head is no easy feat. This was an excellent way to weed out recruits who only had superficial enthusiasm. Damien focused all his strength into his arms to lift the large rock over his head. Up you go. The official, standing nearby, immediately recorded it in his notebook and announced clearly, "Candidate Damien, pass." Drops of sweat rolled down his cheeks, but Damien's expression didn't change. Once one reaches 1-star mana, this challenge was nothing. And so, the first test concluded. The next part of the exam was... Eiffel took a deep breath and used his thunderous voice to shout across the entire field. Now for the second test. Damien stood among the crowd of tall, muscular soldiers, remaining silent to listen to the announcement. The endurance run was officially beginning. Eiffel began to explain the rules concisely. The time limit is 1 hour and 30 minutes. You must complete the distance before time runs out. Shoulder-to-shoulder contact with other candidates and minor accidents are allowed, but attacking each other is strictly prohibited. He had already known this rule from his previous life and immediately saw through the hidden scheme within the seemingly humane regulation. Because of that rule, there were certainly proctors disguised and running along with the crowd. Sure enough, scanning the crowd, Damien noticed a few people possessing a composure and aura completely different from the rest. Eiffel ended his speech with a stern warning. Furthermore, anyone who strays from the designated track will be immediately disqualified. Keep that in mind. Not only was he not intimidated, but the corner of his lips curled into a meaningful smile. This test should be fun. On the ground, a bright red chalk line was drawn to mark the starting line of the race. While Damien was warming up his muscles, a teenager suddenly approached him. "Are we in the same group?" He stopped his movements and looked around to confirm. "Me?" The other person nodded repeatedly, clearly interested. "Yeah, you. I've been watching you for a while." Damien found his true motives confusing. "Watching me? Why?" He silently observed the person in front of him. "Wait." His face looked familiar. Before Damien could think deeper to search his memory, Eiffel took a step forward. "Do you even have to ask?" He deliberately lowered his voice to a whisper in Damien's ear. "You know how to use mana, don't you?" He cautiously took a step back to keep a safe distance, quickly analyzing the situation in his head. There was no law forbidding commoners from using mana. But usually, commoners who could use it either had a wealthy family backing them or a very special force standing behind them. Looking closely at the other person's delicate features, a suspicion suddenly sparked in Damien's mind. To verify his question, he didn't beat around the bush and asked directly, "By the way, what's your name?" Eiffel was a bit surprised by the sudden question, pointing his index finger at his own nose. "My name." Immediately after, he regained his composure, placed a hand on his chest, and introduced himself clearly. "I am Eiffel." Even though he had somewhat imagined it, when he heard that name with his own ears, Damien was still shaken. Was Eiffel at this training camp? The person who would become a general and be granted the title of Count at the age of 30, a legend among legends. This name to Damien of the previous life was like a bolt of lightning. He was one of the most successful commoners in history. Everyone admired him. Eiffel extended a hand, expressing his desire to be friends. "Anyway, it's rare to find anyone our age here, so I'm a bit bored. Let's do our best." After understanding the other's illustrious future identity, the wariness in his heart quickly dissipated. "Yeah." He reached out comfortably and shook Eiffel's waiting hand. Since the other was being so friendly, there was no reason for him to be hostile. After all candidates finished warming up their bodies, Eiffel held a megaphone in one hand. "Everyone get ready." The moment the signal horn sounded, hundreds of people surged forward simultaneously. Within just a few short breaths, Damien, having maintained a steady pace, was overtaken by the group in front. Looking at their long strides and wind-tearing speed, he silently evaluated. Are they planning to go all out from the start? Other candidates in the running group also belatedly realized the anomaly in the lead group. What is that? What the hell are they doing? The group of disguised proctors had now gathered, forming a sturdy horizontal line blocking the candidates. "Let's go." The candidates behind struggled to catch up while chattering noisily. "Looks like that is the Wall of Lament. I heard that passing it is the real challenge of this test. Doesn't that mean we just need to tail them and overtake them at the last minute?" Damien maintained steady breathing while running. That was clearly a wise strategy, but he suddenly stomped his foot hard on the ground, his body launching forward like an arrow released from a bow. "Too bad that's not my style." Damien's sudden and bold burst of speed completely shocked Eiffel beside him. At the front of the race, the group of proctors was still maintaining an extremely stable and leisurely pace. Just take it easy and save your energy. After all, the real race only begins in the last 10 minutes. Yes, sir, understood. Raymond's keen ears suddenly heard rapid, powerful footsteps approaching from behind. At this rate, by the time we reached the finish line, shocked, he whipped his head around to look, and hitting his eyes was a small figure lunging forward like a bird in flight. What kind of crazy kid is that? Raymond was also distracted by the rapid footsteps. Another daredevil popped up this year. Raymond spoke up to warn him to be sure, avoiding unexpected incidents. Don't hurt him, just intimidate him, so he's scared. He massaged the bulging muscles on his arms and flashed a sly smile. I can't promise what will happen when he crashes into my steel shoulders, but I'll try to go easy on him as much as possible. However, the smug smile hadn't even faded before a small hand lunged from behind, gripping his shoulder tightly and pushing with force. Out of the way! Raymond was stunned for a beat. What? Damien skillfully used the force of pressing against Raymond's shoulder as a pivot, leaping over to leave the proctor group behind. They had only been careless for one short second and were already left far behind by him. When he recovered, Raymond panicked and shouted loudly, "What are you doing? Stop him!" The other proctors in the group also instantly woke up from their shock. Yes, sir. Even without looking back, Damien could feel their heavy footsteps chasing closer and closer. Indeed, the proctors had skills that overwhelmed the candidates. But once again, he took a deep breath, pouring force in his legs to accelerate, stretching the distance even further. They're just proctors at a training camp after all. Witnessing his recklessness and breathtaking breakthrough, Eiffel, running behind, couldn't help but laugh heartily. What's wrong with this kid? Don't know. Raymond was also strongly stimulated by Damien's actions. I can't let him pass me that easily. Eiffel stomped hard to accelerate, leaving the group of candidates lagging behind to chase Damien's back. Other ordinary candidates, standing and watching the entire performance, were completely shaken. What? Is playing like that accepted too? Let's follow. Yeah, just imitating what he's doing is enough. As a result, when the group of proctors turned to look back, they were shocked to see a surging wave of people rushing in with high spirits. What the hell is this? The enthusiastic shouts of the candidate group even reached the other side of the training ground. Damien heard the loud noise and turned back in confusion, his heart mingled with curiosity. The situation on training field number 2 seems a bit unusual. Raymond knew some extra information and discussed in a low voice. Seems like there's a rather strange recruit who just enlisted. Should we increase the number of proctors? The two were still hesitant when a deep, powerful voice interrupted them. Leave them be. The two immediately stood at attention, simultaneously calling out, "Chief Proctor Raymond." He looked toward the source of the noise and asked back in a casual tone, "Do you want people to think we are ordering the outcome of the exam? Whether they can break through or not depends on their mettle." Following the small figure leading on the track on the other side, Raymond said faintly, "And the losers too. After all, my eye for people is never wrong." He added to himself with satisfaction. Unexpectedly, he was the type of person who created such an unexpected variable. His actions had incited others to rush forward. On the battlefield, those who always lead the purge are those who know how to ignite such a fire. At this moment on the track, Damien felt clearly that every muscle in his body was gradually reaching its maximum limit. This was the 29th lap, out of a total of 30. He poured the last bit of strength into rushing through the red line, marking the end. The final sprint. Eiffel, with amazing physical strength, was also tailing closely behind his back. "Hey, Damien." He glanced slightly to the side, a bit distracted to chat with Eiffel. "You look quite energetic." Eiffel took the opportunity to lunge forward, leaning close to Damien's ear to ask curiously, "Was this your plan from the start?" Damien didn't quite understand the deep meaning in that question yet. "What do you mean?" Eiffel gestured toward the other candidates, collapsing in a corner on the side of the track. "If we didn't know how to use mana, we would have been as miserable as them." Damien tried to regulate his breathing steadily, the corner of his lips curling into a smile. With an ace up my sleeve, why wouldn't I pull out to use? Eiffel felt increasingly interested in this new friend. You are truly an interesting guy. While they were talking, both of them simultaneously crossed the finish line of the last leg. The official at the finish line was still shocked, only finally speaking out. Both of you pass. In a quiet room filled with documents, a question full of interest suddenly rang out. Heard there's an interesting kid who just entered the 3rd training camp. Standing not far away, Kaysen clasped his hands behind his back and confirmed seriously. Yes, Coach Raymond contacted me about that boy. He said the boy is only 13 years old. That information instantly attracted the attention of the person opposite him. He placed his hand on the table and stood up. If a picky person like Raymond still praises a kid as interesting, then I'm starting to get a bit curious. He paused for a moment, seemingly weighing the value of that assessment, then narrowed his eyes, creating an invisible pressure, and asked, "So, what's that child's name?" At the same time, at the tall architectural area, a group of people gathered as if something caught their attention. In the middle of the yard was a giant notice board. After reading the content on it, someone clutched their head and lamented, "Damn it, how did I fail? No way." And you? Beside those laments, there were still many who couldn't hide their happiness. Finally I passed. Damien felt confused. Was that worth being so happy about? The scene before his eyes inadvertently pulled back to the difficult times in his previous life. Thinking back to the wartime when being forced to enlist was common, everyone found every way to evade duty, always checking if their soles and heels were blistered. Amid that bustling atmosphere, he raised his hand to his chin and quietly pondered. But come to think of it, these days are still peaceful, quite tranquil. Suddenly, someone called his name. Damien. Hearing his name, he turned with suspicion. Eiffel. The other immediately waved his hand excitedly. Congrats, now we are classmates, right? That remark made Damien quickly look toward the notice board. Really? You passed too? Eiffel nodded to confirm. Yeah, that's right, I even checked the list. Your name is on it. While talking, he pointed his hand to the top position on the board. It's right at the very top. Damien, 13 years old. He nodded. I just saw it. After crossing the competitive selection exam together, the atmosphere between the two had become closer than before. Let's help each other out if we can. Even so, it's not certain we'll be assigned to the same unit. Facing that enthusiasm, he still kept his composure and replied, I'm looking forward to it too. Leaving the crowded area, Eiffel suddenly remembered something and turned to ask, a week until enlistment. What are you planning to do during this time? Damien didn't answer immediately. He spent a few seconds thinking before speaking slowly. I'll probably be quite busy. Looking into the distance, he added meaningfully, I have a few things to resolve this week. Hearing that, the curiosity in Eiffel's heart was instantly piqued. He took a step forward and slung his arm around the other. What the hell is that important? He just shook his head. Nothing big, just need to buy a few necessary items before entering the camp. Hearing that, he suddenly remembered an important point and hurriedly added, come to think of it, are the issued combat boots stiff? So they say you must prepare extra padding for your soles and heels. This information made him let out an oh. Really, these things were nothing strange to Damien. He already knew all about this from his bitter experience before. But to avoid revealing his peculiarity compared to his current status, he still replied sincerely, anyway, thank you. I'll keep that in mind. Eiffel heard that and grinned with satisfaction. It's nothing, why? Thank me. Not wanting the conversation to continue revolving around himself, he switched to another topic. How about you? What do you intend to do this week? The sudden question made him pause slightly. Me, I also have a few things to do. Seeing that unnatural expression, Damien realized the other person was hiding something. Are you sure? However, Damien didn't intend to dig deep because he had no interest in meddling in other people's business. Yeah, prepare well for your stuff. See you next week. I'm off. He also waved goodbye. Yeah, see you soon. Just then, a strange figure quietly approached from behind. When the distance was only a few steps, that person said slowly, who was that? Hearing the familiar sound, Alan immediately turned his head. Damien, why do you want to enlist? This made him a bit surprised. Huh? Seeing that reaction, he continued to explain what had been bothering him all this time. If you can use mana to this extent, You don't look like a normal person at all. Hearing that, Damien glanced to the side and said casually, "Are you skillfully bragging that you aren't an ordinary person yourself?" That blunt counterattack made Eiffel only manage a forced smile. "Does it sound like that?" The sound of footsteps continuously echoed on the ground. After a few beats of silence, he replied, "Because this is the only place where I belong." Recalling that dialogue, Eiffel's lips curled up unconsciously. He was the same. Surely he also had his own private struggles that were hard to talk about with others. Then he turned around and told himself, "I just have a feeling this is someone I will be running into for a long time." That remark made Alan confused. "Pardon," but he just shook his head, with no intention of explaining further. "Nothing, let's go." The old man bowed respectfully and replied, "Yes, young master, everything is prepared over there." The familiar title hit his ears and made Eiffel's steps stop abruptly, sighing with boredom. "Alan, I told you not to call me young master in places like this." He leaned on his cane and followed with a guilty tone. "Yes, I apologize." Brilliant sunlight covered each house along the crowded street. Among the constant flow of people, Damien walked slowly and continuously observed everything. It's hard to believe. Lively bargaining mixed with laughter, creating a vibrant atmosphere. "Can't you help me with anything?" "Good heavens, I said I'm doomed already." He was a bit surprised. The capital in his memory was originally, for a moment, images of people with hollow faces from hunger and weak pleas flooded back. "Please, just one loaf of dry bread is enough." Looking at the lively street in front, Damien silently calculated in his heart. This atmosphere, anyway, will change within the next 5 years. Before that time comes, I must quickly prepare as much as possible. That thought appeared, and a series of plans were quickly rearranged. To do that, first I need to find the Hamal Merchant Guild. When the era of war arrives, weapons and artifacts practical for the battlefield along with food will become the most important things. That is when the role of merchant guilds becomes core. This made Damien suddenly remember one thing. In the past, the wealthiest merchant guild on this continent was the Hamal Guild. Amid the undulating mountains stretching to the horizon, a military unit was temporarily camping to rest after many days of continuous marching. The quiet atmosphere was quickly broken when a soldier came running from afar in a hurry. "Captain, it seems relief supplies are being transported over there," heading toward a convoy of carriages approaching. That person was suspicious. "Isn't that the Hamal Guild?" Hearing that, Kaysen also observed and spoke slowly. "People rumor that is the wealthiest guild nowadays." That comment instantly made the person next to him dissatisfied. "Damn it. While our side is risking our lives on the battlefield, their side." However, before the conversation could continue further, Damien interrupted. "If it wasn't for the amount of wheat and weapons they sold, you also know they're donating for free, don't you?" He looked flustered at that, saying, "I know. I just felt a bit bitter about it." At this, his gaze shifted to the supply-laden wagons being transported in. But it's not easy to constantly donate such large sums of money to charity. Setting that topic aside, Damien called out to his comrades, "Everyone, hurry up and get your relief supplies." A chorus of responses immediately echoed across the barracks. "Yes, sir." Standing by and observing the scene, Damien quietly watched everyone happily receiving the food and supplies they so desperately needed. While everyone was still busy, Yerk approached from behind and suddenly spoke up. "Captain, it seems that person is the owner of the Hamal Trading Company." Hearing this, he immediately looked in the direction the other pointed and confirmed. "The trading company owner?" Yerk pointed to the person busy directing the wagon train. "Yes. Do you see the one wearing the white cloak standing at the front? But looking at that guy, he just looks like an arrogant jerk." As his consciousness returned to the present, the harsh sunlight was still stretching across the street ahead. Leaning against the wall by the road, Damien silently organized the information he knew. They said the Hamal Trading Company had been doing charity work even before the war broke out. Out of the 40 trading companies in the capital, if you narrowed the scope, there were probably only about 7 left. Since they were also doing charity work, I'll start checking from the largest trading companies first. As the last rays of the day dipped below the horizon, an orange-yellow glow slowly covered the city. After a day of running around, Damien stopped in front of the door of a trading company at the end of the street. "Is this the last one?" With that thought in mind, He crossed the threshold and stepped inside. "Excuse me, is anyone here?" Not long after the call, Yerk slowly walked out from the back. "How can I help you?" Just by seeing the other person, Damien immediately came to a conclusion in his heart. This really was the last one. He bowed and politely spoke up. "I heard that the Hamal trading company does charity work, so I wanted to come and discuss investing in a good cause." Just by seeing the other person, Damien immediately came to a conclusion in his heart. This really was the last one. He bowed and politely spoke up. "I heard that the Hamal trading company does charity work, so I wanted to come and discuss investing in a good cause." That answer made him chuckle with interest. A young person with such commendable thoughts. While moving to the tea table as directed, he calculated. "Everything so far has been rubbish, but I still have to check each one." Sitting down slowly, he offered a friendly smile and proactively introduced himself. "I'm the owner of Hamal Trading Company, Yerk." Hearing that name, Damien couldn't help but be stunned. Yerk? Outwardly, he remained calm, but inside, ripples were forming. Have I finally found him? Suppressing the thoughts swirling in his head, he quickly replied, "Yes, my name is Damien." He nodded and gestured toward the opposite chair. "Yes, nice to meet you. Let's sit down and talk." As soon as he was seated, Damien couldn't wait any longer and hurriedly asked, "This might be a bit rude to ask, but do you have any sons?" This left him somewhat confused. He looked at him for a few seconds and then suddenly let out a hearty laugh. "I don't have a son, but I have a daughter who is still a bit immature." This surprised him. "A daughter? What is this?" He sighed inwardly. Another scam? As the words were spoken, a sudden sound caught Damien's attention, and he turned around. "Dad, I'm home." As Deal entered, he recognized her immediately. It was the owner of Hamal Trading Company from his previous life. "Have I found her?" Yerk gestured toward him and introduced. "Go say hello. This is Damien. He's here to invest in our charity fund." Ariel raised her hand to adjust her hair and smiled. "Hello, Mr. Damien," she asked, full of anticipation. "You said you came to invest in our charity work?" Damien looked up and replied, "Yes, that's right." He stroked his chin, silently pondering. Something was off. The head of Hamal Trading Company in the previous life was clearly a man, but the two of them looked exactly alike, and their ages matched. Damien looked up at Ariel, scrutinizing her carefully. "Don't tell me this beautiful face is actually a girl's. Why would she use the name Hamal to take over the company?" She looked at him seriously and asked, "May I ask how much capital you intend to invest?" The trading company uses money differently depending on the amount. He covered his mouth with his fist, appearing relaxed as he said, "For now, I want to invest 300 gold coins, and depending on how things progress, I will inject more capital later." Ariel was startled and covered her mouth with her hand. 300 gold coins. Yerk also couldn't believe it and confirmed, "Are you serious?" His eyes narrowed, and he held out a hand to ask, "But if this is an investment and not a donation, do you have any specific requirements in exchange for this money?" Damien smiled brightly, clasping his hands together. "I want to hold a stake in Hamal Trading Company, in the form of receiving a portion of the profits to recoup the investment capital." Yerk stared at him, exclaiming in amazement, "A kid who is such a big spender." He pondered secretly, at this age to have that much money, could it be? Then he cautiously asked, "If you don't mind, could I ask where this money came from?" Damien closed his eyes and replied nonchalantly, "You don't need to worry about that. I just want to use my late parents' inheritance for something useful." Hearing this, Yerk quickly bowed his head to apologize. "Understand, I apologize for being rude." He smiled and waved his hand. "It's nothing at all. I completely understand." He looked straight at Damien. "We probably need to have a meeting about the company's shares. At that time, we will give you a definitive answer. Is that okay?" He did not hesitate to agree. "Yes, that works. Then I'll see you all later." As Ariel was about to leave, she saw Yerk deep in thought with his arms crossed. "What's wrong, father?" He recalled Damien's mature demeanor during the negotiation. "Aren't you surprised? The boy is only 13 years old." Yerk kept thinking about it, but that look in his eyes wasn't a joke. He was definitely no ordinary child. He crossed his arms and let out a sigh. "It's a pity. If only he were about 5 years older, the two of you would be a perfect match." Ariel heard this, her face flushing red as she shouted, "Father!" A sound of embarrassment echoed inside the building. "What the hell are you talking about, father?" Yerk ignored her and teased. "But who knows? Maybe he likes someone older than him?" Ariel shouted angrily. "Stop it, father!" After finishing business with the Hamal trading company, time flew by in a flash. In the blink of an eye, it was the day to enlist. Damien stood alone in front of the main gate, looking ahead and exclaiming, "Today is truly a completely new beginning." Damien raised his hand toward the sun high above. Even if his previous life went up in smoke for nothing, this life had to be different. Then he clenched his fist with determination. "This time, I will be the one to devour this entire empire." After a long while, Damien brought his luggage into the room. "I was assigned to the 3rd training company, 1st platoon, right?" He looked around, seeing no familiar faces. Was Eiffel assigned to a different platoon? Damien placed his luggage on the bed and lamented, "Forgot, he's the only one around my age here. What a pity." Just then, a booming sound made him look over. "Very nice to meet you all." He stood at the door with his hands on his hips and looked in. "I'm the one who will be managing you for the next month. Platoon Leader Brian of the 1st platoon." Then Brian held up 3 fingers to emphasize, "Right now, we will begin inspecting personal belongings, food, and water." His face darkened, and he folded his 3 fingers into a threatening fist. "Scum, especially anyone carrying alcohol or cigarettes, step forward and confess immediately. Anyone I catch hiding anything will get a taste of punishment in a very fun way." Damien watched as the guys at the neighboring beds started to panic, claiming, "I quit smoking but grabbed it by mistake," or the shopkeeper said bringing alcohol and wouldn't be discovered. He looked over in that direction, sighing silently. "If you idiots bought it, hide it well, or don't bring it all." Brian walked over, shouting coldly, "Dump everything out your bags right now." After a while, he stood in front of Damien's bed, looking at the luggage on the bed and declaring, "Nothing unusual here." Brian stroked his chin and asked, "By the way, how old are you? Your face looks so young." Damien replied with a calm face, "I'm 13. He was shocked to hear this. 13. Kyle, sitting on his bed, shouted angrily, "Damn it, what kind of time is this? Now even kids are being let into the army." Logan also puffed and shouted, "Do you think life is a joke?" He saw Damien looking over, his face immediately darkening. "What are you looking at, kid?" Looking to talk back. He immediately closed his eyes, thinking to himself that there was no need to waste words with someone like him. But Damien's eyes flashed with a bright red light as he stared at Kyle. "I'll remember this face. I'll show you what it feels like to be beaten to a pulp by a kid." Logan next to him couldn't help but hug himself. "What is this?" Suddenly felt a chill down my spine. Brian's voice rang out. "You there?" He walked up to him and demanded, "Dump everything out of your backpack." Logan was terrified and explained, "This is everything, sir." Brian's face darkened as he leaned in close to him. "Do you want me to search your bag myself?" Logan immediately panicked and took everything out of his basket. "No need, sir. I'm dumping out right here. This and this, and..." Brian stood with his hands on his hips, threatening coldly. "I'll warn you beforehand. Anyone who hides anything, and I search it out, it'll be contraband." The crowd thought of what Brian said and turned pale, preparing mentally to run around the training field all night long. He looked at the people around and urged, "Hurry up and dump it all out." Damien found it incredibly satisfying. Serves them right. After a while, Brian walked back and forth and declared, "That's it for the equipment inspection." He turned and looked at the crowd, declaring, "Now I need to appoint a temporary student platoon leader to command you soldiers whenever I'm away." Brian reached into his pocket and took out a piece of paper to check. As soon as he saw the paper, he started in surprise. "There is a soldier in our platoon who was accepted with a soaring score." After putting the paper down, Brian shouted toward the crowd, "Damien, who is Damien? Step out." His eyes looked toward Kyle, who was darkening in a corner. "Is it that guy from earlier?" To be a student platoon leader, character is just as important as ability. Brian walked up to him and asked, "You're Damien, aren't you?" Just then, Damien stepped out. "That's me." He was surprised to hear that and turned his head. "It's not that guy." "Then who is it?" Brian saw him, and his eyes widened as he froze in place. He gripped the paper in his hand tightly and stammered, "You said you were 13 earlier, right?" Damien calmly confirmed, "Yes, that's right." Kyle heard this and looked over angrily, loudly mocking, A kid like that wants to be a student platoon leader. Damn it. Since when did the army turn into a daycare? Brian looked over with hands on hips. Quiet down over there. He still refused to obey and argued. But what I said is true, sir. Kyle stood up and walked step by step in front of him. The student platoon leader represents you. Sir, shouldn't they have to prove their leadership ability? Then he pointed his index finger at Damien contemptuously. Letting a kid take power will ruin the platoon's discipline. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. I'm not interested in this troublesome platoon leader position, but this guy just keeps looking for trouble. Then Damien silently decided. All right, let's play along with him and see. He tilted his head and scoffed, provoking, I'm confident I'll do better than some brute who's all brawn and no brain. That's for sure. Kyle heard this and roared with rage. You brat, what did you say? Brian glanced over and asked. Your name is Kyle, right? He replied calmly, Yes, sir. For now, I will still take the position. Immediately after, he gently grabbed Kyle by the collar. A killing intent radiated from Brian, staring at him and shouting, If you dare to look down on your comrades by calling them brats or any similar words ever again, next time it won't just be a simple warning. Clear. Kyle looked up from below at his serious face. Yes. Understood, sir. Then Brian looked up at Damien. However, what he said is not entirely unreasonable. The authority of a student platoon leader requires actual leadership ability. Kyle raised a hand and suggested, How about this then, platoon leader? Why not let me and this brat have a match? Whoever wins takes the seat. Wouldn't that prove both ability and authority? Brian looked at him and asked, Do you agree to this? Damien closed his eyes, thinking to himself that this was a good opportunity to reset the platoon's discipline. Fine, that's fine too. Then he pointed at Kyle and shouted, So I just need to beat this blockhead to a pulp, right? He asked back with a face full of rage. Blockhead? Brian looked at the others in the room. Do you all agree to this deal? They all replied in unison. Agreed. He led the group and quickly left. No need to drag it out. Everyone, follow me to the shooting range for a match. Brian looked at Kyle's arrogant appearance and Damien's calm face, declaring, The match starts immediately. Brian looked at Kyle and Damien and asked, The rule is that if the opponent surrenders, the fight must stop immediately. Ready? He smiled smugly and said, I'm ready. Damien closed his eyes and nodded. I'm ready. Brian's voice rang out, declaring, Then the match begins. Kyle used his other hand to rub his shoulder and mumbled, thinking that bullying a kid made him feel a bit guilty. Damien sighed and urged, Stop blabbering and come at me. Clumsy brute. Veins on his forehead bulged as he roared with rage. You brat. Kyle's eyes flashed with red light. The reason you're going to be beaten like a dog today is because of that mouth of yours. Damien stood still, quiet and calm. This guy's speed is better than I thought. Compared to the soldiers from my previous life, he's actually pretty decent. He watched Kyle's figure close in on him. Damien's eyes stared at the fist in front of him, thinking that was all there was to it. Then he tilted his body and jumped to the side to dodge. No chance of hitting me. Kyle looked at the scene in front of him, unable to believe it. Dodged it? It's like he knew exactly where my fist was going to go. Then he gathered his strength, intending to land another punch. Seems like you learned a few tricks somewhere, but you can't dodge this one. Damien tilted his head and dodged gently once again. Too slow. Kyle smashed his two fists together with a loud bang. If you could dodge my punch, I'll just ram my whole body into you. Then he used all his strength and lunged straight at where Damien was standing. He closed his eyes and felt Kyle's two-hand approaching. He grazed past once again, shouting in anger. We're on Earth. Damien's voice echoed from behind. Here. Immediately after, Kyle let out a pained cry as he was struck in the chest. Damien looked up at Kyle, thinking that taking a direct hit like that would make it hard for him to stay upright. He watched him cry out in pain, supporting himself on one hand to stabilize. A bit wobblier than I thought, huh? Kyle's face darkened as he lunged madly toward this side. You bastard, I'll kill you. Damien jumped back, avoiding his attack. This should be enough to finish him. Then he punched Kyle straight in the stomach. Damien watched him hold his stomach and fall to the ground. The centerpiece, Kyle's head hit the ground hard, and he fainted on the spot. Damien lightly brushed the dust off his hands. Looks like this clumsy guy is done for. Then he used a glare full of killing intent and looked over. Anyone else want to try? The crowd looked at each other, but no one dared to step up. Immediately after, Brian's voice rang out, declaring, "The training match is over. Recruit Damien wins. From now on, Recruit Damien is officially the student platoon leader." A while later, Kyle walked out of the infirmary and gently closed the door. "I'll go first," he thought to himself with a sour face. Never expected that one day he would be carried to the infirmary in such a fainted state. Kyle couldn't help but recall that punch. He couldn't remember anything after being hit in the right side. Did he lose consciousness right from the first attack? Kyle stood still in front of the room door, pondering. I thought there was no one in this place who could be my match. In the end, I lost so miserably. The people in the room were startled to see him push the door open with a dark look on his face. They probed and looked at Kyle, whispering, "What now? Should we stop him? We have to stop him. If we let him keep doing this, he'll end up back in the infirmary." Suddenly, Kyle walked up behind and called out, making him look over. "Damien." He knelt on the ground, bowed his head respectfully, and shouted, "I admit defeat. From now on, I will treat you as my big brother." Damien was stunned on the spot, thinking in amazement, "What the hell? Why is this guy acting up suddenly? Did I accidentally hit him in the head earlier?" Then Kyle looked up, seriously narrating, "You are the youngest person I have ever fought, but you are the strongest. Respecting someone stronger than yourself is just natural." Kyle's voice rang out, "Please accept me as your subordinate." Damien was also surprised on the spot, thinking he was an arrogant and rude guy, but it turns out he is someone who knows how to respect his superiors and follow others. He then reached out a hand to make peace. "No need to call me boss or anything. Just calling me Damien is fine." Damien added with a bright smile, "Let's do our best from now on, Kyle." Kyle reached out and shook his hand. "I look forward to fighting alongside you too, Damien." 1 week at the barracks passed quickly after Damien's group enlisted. Brian stood with his hands on his hips, watching them run, and shouted, "Don't stop. Keep your eyes locked on the back of the person in front of you, and keep running." Damien couldn't help but feel impressed. The instructors packed in so much insane training that time flew by like the wind. After watching everyone finish running, Brian raised his hand and declared, "Training is over for now. Soldiers, disperse back to your barracks. Damien, you come with me." Hearing that, he followed him, feeling suspicious. "What's going on? Where are we going all of a sudden?" Damien followed Brian and stood in front of a room, confused. The management office? Are they going to announce something? He looked at the line of people standing straight inside, wondering, why are those guys here too? Damien stepped inside, deciding to just listen to what they had to say and take it from there. Kaysen saw him and covered his mouth, shouting, "Where did this shrimp come from? Oops, damn it, I let that slip out. I should have just kept that in my head." Damien looked up. The guy was skinny and looked exactly like a gecko. He secretly imagined the scene in his head. Having this guy stand next to Kyle would be hilarious. The two of them had completely opposite builds, like night and day. Kaysen gritted his teeth, looking annoyed. "What are you staring at?" Damien replied calmly, "I'm just curious how much wider those eye sockets of yours can actually open." He shouted in a rage, but suddenly stopped after hearing a cough. "You brat." Kaysen frowned and shouted to stop him. "Quiet. Is this place for you people to cause a scene?" Kaysen whispered a threat, looking furious. "I'll deal with you later." From above, his voice continued. "It seems all the squad leaders and soldiers from every unit are gathered here now." Kaysen looked straight at the crowd and explained, "The reason I've called you here today is to announce the inter-squad match taking place next week. This is an extremely important midterm assessment for the squads. Therefore, squad leaders and soldiers, lead your units and prepare well. Is that clear?" The soldiers below put their hands behind their backs and answered in unison, "Clear, sir." Kaysen dismissed them. "All right, disperse back to your barracks." Kaysen walked up to Damien and yelled, "Hey, kid." He raised a fist high, threatening loudly. "This little brat doesn't know how to watch his step, does he? Watch out. You might get beaten to a pulp one of these days." Riel, standing behind, chimed in mockingly, "The guy who doesn't know how to watch his step is actually him. We're all student squad leaders here. He's just acting bossy because he thinks he's older. Instead of standing here blabbering and wasting time, wouldn't it be better to go train with your own squad leader?" Kaysen turned his head, furious, and scolded, "If it doesn't concern you, beat it. Or do you want a beating too?" Riel smiled and replied, "That remains to be seen. Let's see who ends up getting beaten." Then he gestured to Damien and said, "Hey, ignore that crazy guy, let's go." He replied, "Yeah, let's go." Damien walked in front and let out a scoff. He turned his head and asked, "Hey, what squad are you in?" Kaysen gave a thumbs up and introduced himself arrogantly, "Squad 4. I'm the leader of Squad 4. The corners of Damien's mouth curled into a bright smile. "All right, I'll remember that. See you at the squad match." The idiot was walking down the hallway when Riel asked, "You're Damien, right?" Surprised, he asked, "How do you know my name?" Riel explained with a smile, "I've been hearing your name constantly from that guy Eiffel in my squad. They say you took first place in practical skills." He looked at Damien and officially introduced himself. "I'm Private Riel, leader of Squad 3. I'm counting on your ability for the upcoming squad match." He put a hand on his hip and replied, "It's nothing." After returning to the room, Damien called out seriously, "Attention, everyone." Kyle stood up and walked toward him, asking, "Damien, what's up?" Damien's voice rang out, explaining that in 1 week there would be a squad match between all the platoons and us. Thinking of that victory flag, he declared, "We have to take first prize at all costs." Damien clapped his hands together forcefully. "And there's one thing you must remember among the 3 teams we will be facing." He held out both hands and added, "We are going to completely crush Squad 4, especially." Damien made a throat-slitting gesture and warned, "That's squad leader of Squad 4. I want him beaten even worse than the rest. Do you understand?" Looking at the group gathered in front of him, Damien thought to himself that as they entered the second week of training, the atmosphere on the training field had completely changed. Nolan looked at the document in his hand with a serious face. "The Army's goal is to win the competition, and from this week on, you will learn about battle formations, something extremely important for the match." He narrowed his eyes and looked down at the crowd, reminding them, "Even though this is a team competition, we will still award individual points to soldiers who demonstrate outstanding skills. So, do your best to show them." The group shouted in unison, "Understood, sir." Damien couldn't help but ponder. Getting extra points? That sounds good. Who at the training camp doesn't want a high score to get assigned to the branch they like? His mouth curled slightly, and he thought happily, "Well, I'll just give it my best shot." Then Nolan gestured in the air. "Today, we will learn the triangular formation, an offensive tactic designed to pierce through enemy ranks." Damien thought to himself, "A triangular formation? Huh?" Information about it immediately flashed in his head. This formation has immense destructive power, like a giant arrow. But the weakness is that if the spearhead collapses, the rest will disintegrate as well. Damien glanced at Kyle next to him. "Even so, if the leader is strong enough, it creates destructive power. Luckily, our team has exactly the right guy to act as the spearhead." Immediately after, Nolan put his hands behind his back and declared, "Now we will practice the triangular formation right away. Split into 2 groups and quickly form triangles move." Damien looked at him and said to Kyle, "You go over there. I'll lead the formation on this side." He huffed coldly, "I won't lose this time." He walked in front of the group and waved his hand slightly. "All right, come closer, everyone. I'll show you a tip about the triangular formation the instructor just taught." Cheetan asked, looking suspicious, "What tip? Have you ever done this before?" Damien replied calmly, "My father was in the military, so I've learned it before." The group huddled together to listen as he began to explain. "The guys on the other side will definitely form the triangle exactly as the instructor said. And when they charge," Damien clenched his fist and shouted, "Sound good?" Cheetan also raised his fist and laughed. "Let's try it." Hearing that, Damien stood with his hands on his hips and called out, "You guys who are strong, stand right behind me, and those who are shorter hold the shields to cover the outside." He gripped his shield, turned his head back, and reminded them, "Remember to hold the shields high. At least cover your heads." The group answered in unison, "Understood." Damien looked up at the opposite side. They seemed to have prepared their defense quite thoroughly, but whatever they do is useless. He concluded softly that just piercing straight through would be enough, then turned back and gave the order, "Don't slow down. Finish it in 1 charge." Nolan waved his hand and gave the order, "Match start." The sound of his left foot rang out. Noises erupted across the field. Damien looked over and smiled slightly, thinking, for the first time, their defensive stance is pretty good. They advanced without breaking formation at all. His eyebrows knitted tightly. All right, about to close in on Kyle's formation. Then he shouted loudly, urging them, "Speed up, brothers!" On the other side, Kyle's group stepped in rhythm, cheering constantly. A purple light radiated from Damien's body, thinking to himself that it was his turn to act. During physical and endurance training, he hadn't even bothered using mana. He pondered secretly that in times like these, he had to bring it out to use. He let out a shout and collided hard with Kyle's shield, pushing forward. Damien pressed hard on his shield and excitedly gave the order, "Push harder! Dig into the gap, just like we planned." He calculated in his head that if they aimed for the weakness instead of rushing straight into them, the opponent would be a bit confused. And at that very moment, a sound rang out. "Someone stop him!" Damien's eyes brightened as he stared backward. "I'll do it." He looked at the gap they had created and yelled, "Opportunities here!" Immediately after, long staves from Damien's side simultaneously struck the knees of those in front of them. Logan was knocked backward, startled. "What the hell is this?" Kyle turned his head to see his group falling and screamed, "What are you doing? Get up now." He turned his head toward this side and scolded, "Damn it, I'm dealing with you first." Immediately after, Damien rammed his shield forward. "Kyle, have you forgotten that your opponent is me?" Kyle's face turned dark, and he shouted coldly, "Get out of the way." Damien heard that, raised his shield to block, and asked, "You're telling me to get out of the way?" He replied with a serious face, "Yes." Just as he saw Damien next to him, he exclaimed, "Huh." Immediately after, he gently used force to shove him down, causing Kyle to fall. Damien looked down from above and laughed. "Kyle, your build is great, but you need to learn how to use your strength at the right time and in the right place." Nolan stood still, watching the combat situation. "That kid is much better than I thought." He stared at Damien's small frame, seeing that his physique wasn't anything too outstanding. It was hard to believe he was in the same batch of recruits as the rest of the soldiers. Immediately after, Nolan held his arms out and declared, "Stop." The winner of this practice match is Damien's team. Damien reached out his hand and praised, "Well done, Kyle." Taking his hand and standing up, he said, "Next time, I'll definitely beat you." Then he asked, "By the way, Damien, what strategy did you use?" Those behind Kyle also questioned, "Did you intentionally aim for our weak spot? How are we supposed to block that?" The group surrounded him noisily. "How about we use this move during the squad matches, Damien?" By now, the sunset had dyed the place. Damien looked at Kyle and Logan, who were training nearby. These guys usually ran straight to the barracks as soon as training ended, but now they knew how to sit down, reflect, and practice extra together. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile, thinking to himself, "This atmosphere is good. As long as we prepare properly, there's nothing to worry about regarding the tournament." Suddenly, a piercing sound rang out. "That little brat is actually the squad leader of Squad 1. Huh." Damien let out a puzzled cry and looked over. Din pointed over here and shouted, "Totally. Look at him standing there commanding the soldiers' training." Atun also laughed mockingly. "What's wrong with those people? Why on earth would they listen to a little brat like that?" Logan's face turned black as he looked over. "What did those bastards just say?" "Kid," Chavo also scolded angrily. "Those bastards." Or Din stretched out his hands to continue provoking. "What? A kid is called a kid. Did I say anything wrong?" Atun chimed in. "Just looking at them, you can tell how terrible the level of that squad is." Mason came out from behind, laughing contemptuously. "Forget about them. It's not the followers' fault. The fault lies with that arrogant brat who doesn't know his own strength and acts like a squad leader." Damien turned his head to look at him, unable to resist cursing silently. It's that guy again. Is he the type who just craves a beating? Then he shook his head slightly. Whatever, no point in getting worked up over such small fry. Besides, I'll crush him in the tournament anyway. He then calmly gave the order, "Squad 1, disperse back to the barracks." Suddenly, a voice shouted, "What kind of tone are you guys using, you bastards?" Damien looked up and was surprised by the scene in front of him. Logan's group rushed forward, furious and loud. "If you run into my squad in the tournament, you guys are dead meat. You bastards, just wait until we come and smash you to pieces." Kyle pointed at Mason and declared excitedly, "Especially you, the squinty-eyed guy standing in front. You'd better prepare your coffins first. Then he was fuming, turned his head, and asked, Damien, those bastards you just cursed at are from Squad 4, right? He was startled and confirmed. Huh? Oh yeah, that's right. Kyle and the others stared at them, clapping their fists together. You bastards, we have to beat them to a pulp. Immediately after, the group started yelling excitedly. Even if it's break time today, let's keep training. When we face Squad 4, I'm going to wipe the floor with their faces. Damien looked at them and exclaimed silently. I didn't expect them to be so easily provoked, but who knows? He couldn't help but smile brightly. This is actually pretty sweet. At night, inside Barracks' office, he leaned back in his chair with his arms crossed and asked, Have you seen anyone promising among the recruits this time? Raymond reported with a serious face. Sir, there are a few with potential, but these two stand out the most. Barracks immediately picked up the document to read. Both of them are quite young, aren't they? Do they have anything special? He heard that and said, I'm not too sure, but it seems they already know how to control mana. He was startled and asked again, Mana? Do both of those recruits have that kind of talent? Raymond stood at attention and replied, It doesn't seem like there's anything special, sir. Barracks looked down, calculating in his mind. Most people who sign up for training camp are civilians. Methods for cultivating mana cost a fortune to learn. So for civilians, mana is like a distant, mysterious power. He stared at the information of the two people, muttering, Recruit Damien enlisted after losing both his parents, and Recruit Aphel's background is just as ordinary. It's because they are so excessively ordinary that it makes me uneasy. Immediately after, Barracks looked up and asked, Oh, by the way, I heard there was some friction between the squads earlier. Raymond closed his eyes and reported, Yes, sir. Actually, the commotion involved Recruit Damien. He thought of Mason's group provoking him because Damien was too young to be a squad leader. Damien remembered Logan's group adding that some squad leaders and other team members looked down on him, but the people in Squad 1 got angry, which made the whole squad much more united. Barracks heard this and couldn't help but confirm. You mean the people in Squad 1 have accepted that kid as their leader? Raymond bowed his head to confirm. Yes, sir, that is correct. Barracks rested his chin on one hand and exclaimed, Interesting. He raised a finger and beckoned. Since that's the case, how about we try this? He leaned in to hear Barracks' entire plan. After hearing it, Raymond asked, startled, But sir, don't you think that might backfire? He rested his head on one hand and laughed softly. If so, that just proves their ability only goes that far. Barracks thought of Kyle's group and added, And if their solidarity is strong enough, it's worth a try. So, his eyes flashed with a greedy light as he declared, Increase the training intensity for Squad 1 and Squad 4. The ones who were just quarreling to the maximum for me. Kyle's group was suddenly startled, and they turned their heads back at the same time. What is this? Why did I suddenly get goosebumps? Inside the room, one person lying on the bed shouted, We're done for. Why did they suddenly increase the training hours? The person next to him also spoke up. I heard only our squad and Squad 4 have to train extra as punishment. Kyle remembered today's exercises, gritted his teeth, and shouted. They said there's even crawling practice too. Someone else said uncomfortably, Is it too much to punish us like this just because we swore a few times? Kyle glanced back and asked, Damien, is this even fair? He heard that and pondered silently. Crawling practice? Damien closed his eyes, thinking to himself that he already knew their intentions, then asked back, Well, whether it's fair or not, what else can we do? He stood up and walked toward the group, asking, Do you guys think you're on a vacation? Damien turned to look at the group and questioned, These crawling exercises will definitely make your body sore, but if we get through it, our stamina will be way better than the other squads. Everyone understands the true purpose of this exercise, right? Chevo raised his eyebrows, cursing silently. Damn it, even that kid can think like that. Another person couldn't help but think, If I complain here, doesn't that mean I'm worse than a 13-year-old kid? Damien closed his eyes and laughed as he continued. The first time doing will probably hurt a bit, but I'll cover for you guys, so just give it your all. Then someone else complained, But they aren't planning on making us crawl on that gravel-filled field, are they? He looked up and asked, What? You want them to lay out soft cushions for you to lie on? Kyle asked, looking shocked. But Damien, your tone sounds like you've done this kind of thing many times before, huh? He closed his eyes and thought to himself, well, I've done it constantly, haven't I? In his mind, Damien thought about how, in his previous life, he had to crawl on the ground countless times just to keep this life. Immediately after, he secretly sighed. But that's not the real meaning of crawling practice. Damien couldn't help but think back, forcing crawling practice in the middle of a training schedule that is already exhausting. When one's whole body is covered in scratches and bruises, someone grabbed another's collar and shouted, "What did you just bark, you bastard?" Damien pondered silently. Everyone's mentality is going to become irritable, and their internal squad dynamic is bound to start breaking down. He looked at the group, thinking, overcoming the pressure created by this exercise, that is the real purpose of adding this training. They just want to see which side, Squad 1 or Squad 4, can withstand the heat better. Damien squatted down at the foot of the bed and pulled out a trunk. Since the intentions are already this obvious, no way I'm just sitting here taking it. He then shouted loudly, "Brothers, pull everything out and let's take a look." Dita asked, looking suspicious, "Socks? Why are you suddenly pulling out socks?" His voice rang out from now on. Damien smiled brightly and pulled the socks in his hands forcefully. "I'm going to perform a magic trick to make an amulet for this exercise." The next morning, the instructor stared down and asked, "Squad 1, is everyone assembled?" Damien's group responded, "Yes, sir." "Instructor." He looked down and introduced himself. "All right, I am Nielsen, the instructor in charge of your crawling practice. Today we will learn low crawling techniques." Nielsen put his hands behind his back and looked at the squad leader in front to guide them. Low crawling means you have to lie flat against the ground, keep your spear straight, and move very quickly by combining your hands and knees. Then he pointed to the net in front and asked, "Now you will overcome that obstacle course using this low crawling technique." "Ready," Squad 1 yelled excitedly. "Ready, sir." Nielsen felt impressed. At least these guys still look like they have a bit of life in them, unlike those Squad 4 losers. He looked serious and shouted the order. "Group 1, go sweep the obstacle course for me." "Start." Squad 1 simultaneously lay down and quickly crawled through the nets. Nielsen closed his eyes and thought suspiciously, "We're starting crawling practice in the second week, even though it's usually the fourth week. What on earth is the captain planning?" He looked up at the group and sighed. Crawling on this kind of terrain is painful, not just regular tired. They're bound to struggle and stumble constantly. Suddenly, Nielsen's eyes widened, and he was shocked by the scene in front of him. He looked at the group, who were almost at the finish line, and wondered, what the hell, what kind of insane speed are these guys sweeping through the obstacles at? Nielsen's expression darkened, his face etched with bewilderment. What the hell? This is clearly the first time they've ever practiced crawling. From behind, a figure appeared to report to the instructor. The person asked with a look of doubt, "When is Squad 2 going up?" Nielsen started, pointing toward that side as he gave the order, "Squad 2, move out." The members of the first squad excitedly scrambled toward the sharp net. Nielsen glanced back and forth between the two sides, unable to help but whisper to himself, "What the hell is wrong with this bunch? They look like a pack of ravenous, bloodthirsty maniacs." Damien held his head with his hands and smiled. "I bet the instructor didn't expect us to perform this smoothly on the first day. This is definitely the first time in his career as a crawling instructor that he's run into a case like this." Kyle crawled out, looking incredibly excited. "Damien, that was awesome." Another person added, just as loudly, "I even had to pretend to be in pain and exhausted early." That person rolled up their sleeves and chimed in excitedly. "Moving across this terrain really hurts the elbows. But this trick is a total lifesaver." Dita praised him, looking incredibly stoked, cutting them all up to make padding for our elbows and knees. "Damien, you really are a genius." Immediately after, Nielsen's voice rang out, declaring, "The first squad's crawling exercise is complete. Everyone, disperse and return to the barracks." Kyle turned to look over and asked, "Hey Damien, where on earth did you learn this trick?" Damien didn't even turn his head as he replied, "From my late father." But it came with a warning. He asked, puzzled, "What was it?" He smiled slightly as he answered, "Absolutely never get caught by the instructor." In his mind, Damien recalled the instructor's furious face. "You little brats have a lot of nerve to try and pull a fast one right in front of me, huh? Everyone drop down and do 100 low crawl laps around the training field. Right now. Move it. Kyle burst out laughing upon hearing this and patted him hard on the head. You're a genius. No sooner had he finished speaking, Damien turned his head back, thinking, why does this guy always hit so hard? Is he holding a personal grudge or something? He looked up at the nearby weapons and pondered. Regardless, I only have shield and spear training left, right? Finally, I get to learn the kingdom's best spearmanship. Damien fell into deep thought, recalling that image. The kingdom's best spearmanship. Idiots would look down on it compared to the prestigious techniques of the noble families. But if trained to the highest realm, this is a top-tier technique that loses to no other school. He remembered the circumstances of his previous life. The unfortunate thing is that most people stop after learning the basics and move on. In his past life, this spearmanship was his only turning point. Damien reminisced about that person's figure. I trained until I was half dead, and only then did I achieve some decent results, truly breaking through only after meeting my master. His lips curved slightly into a soft smile. Master, I wonder if that old man is still as eccentric as he used to be. Surely, we'll meet again somewhere down the road. Opposite them, the group from the 4th squad was shouting loudly. This is so tiring. Crawling on a pile of sharp gravel like this. Are they crazy? Kyle looked up and said, looks like Squad 4 just finished their practice too. But those guys, Mason also roared with a face full of fury. Can you all just shut your mouth for a second? Stop whining. I'm begging you. Damien and Kyle were both startled and surprised to hear this. The members of the 4th squad around them immediately shouted back in dissatisfaction. What was that? What did you just bark at us? Mason shouted back, his face livid. Acting like you're some veteran big shot, huh? Kyle saw this and laughed out loud. It's getting tense over there. Looks like they're about to kill each other. Logan heard him and added, without these pads, we'd probably be bickering just as loudly as them, right? Kyle put his arm around him and laughed heartily. We're really lucky. Damien's pads are a total lifesaver for us. Mason looked up, his face full of rage. Those damn guys, how do they still have the mood to sit there laughing? Hey, Dan also asked, annoyed. They clearly had a practice crawling just like us, so how are they still looking so clean and unscathed? Mason roared back. I bet they pulled some kind of stunt. If it weren't for those guys, we wouldn't have been punished with this crawling drill. He clenched his fists tightly and cursed loudly. Those bastards. In his heart, Mason was determined. There are only a few days left until the inter-squad competition. When that time comes, I'm going to crush every single one of you. Mason glared over with a fierce expression, aiming to snatch the championship title. Damien stood there, facing him with a calm expression. Time slipped away very quickly. Finally, the day of the inter-squad competition arrived. The instructor looked at the group below and asked, have all 4 squads gathered? The group shouted in unison, yes, Commander. The man's voice continued, I will call the squads according to the match schedule shortly. Everyone get ready. Kyle turned his head and shouted, hey, Damien. He looked back, puzzled. What is it? He furrowed his brows and glanced at Damien, wondering, you look different today, or am I just imagining things? Kyle's voice continued, something has definitely changed, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Did you grow taller? You are at that growing age, aren't you? Logan behind them laughed excitedly. Kyle, oh Kyle. Damien was already tall to begin with. The person next to him chimed in. That's right. It's just that you're absurdly huge. Stop teasing him. Damien glanced in that direction, thinking angrily. Does this guy sense things instinctively? The image of last night appeared in his mind. In fact, last night he had broken through to the 2nd level of the mana cultivation method. Thanks to that, his mana reserves had increased significantly. Damien thought about that purple light covering him and pondered. Since entering this training camp, the perseverance of practicing mana every day has finally borne fruit. Immediately after, he spoke up, causing him to ask with doubt. Damien said with a serious expression, in this inter-squad competition, I want our squad to achieve a complete, overwhelming victory. In his mind, he thought about that opportunity. The top 5 most excellent soldiers in the tournament would be rewarded with the chance to choose any equipment they liked from the armory. Damien lowered his head, contemplating inwardly. Usually, people would choose weapons or armor with one-time defensive enchantments. but those things are at most rank C. He clenched his fist tightly, thinking about that ring-emitting light. That is not my goal. In my previous life, I once heard a subordinate at training camp number 3 talk about it. Damien stared at it, deep in thought. There's a ring with an incredibly powerful special ability. It is an item with a passive, continuously active effect, so it must be at least rank A or higher. He gently clenched his fist, thinking, to get my hands on it, I have to win this tournament and take first place. If Eiffel also knows how to use mana and gets picked first, he might just snatch it from me. After that, he looked up and asked, "Do you think we can do it?" Kyle laughed slightly and affirmed, "Of course we can." Then he clapped his hands together forcefully. Kyle looked at the group below and asked again, "Did you guys hear that clearly? The squad leader says we're prioritizing this tournament." You all heard that loud and clear, right? They were full of fighting spirit and shouted excitedly, "Exactly! First place is definitely ours." Kyle turned his head to look back and said, "Looks like everyone is on the same page." Damien closed his eyes and smiled. "Excellent." Then, immediately after, the instructor's voice rang out. "I would now like to announce the schedule for the first match of the inter-squad tournament. Squad 1, step forward." Damien led the way, smiling. "Let's charge straight to the top of glory, guys." Just after the squads arrived to report, the instructor loudly announced every detail. The squad tournament will be divided into 2 sides, one attacking and one defending. At the end of a round, we switch sides, playing a total of 2 training rounds. The faces of the recruits showed a unified sense of seriousness as every word from the opponent rang in their ears. If you are attacking and don't manage to capture the flag within the allotted time, you lose. Squad 2. And of course, neither Damien nor the recruits of Squad 1 had any other opinion regarding the instructor's subsequent order. Get ready to attack first. After listening to the instructions, he turned directly to face the members under his command and emphasized every word. "Just do exactly as we did in practice." They shouted in unison, "Understood." Receiving a satisfactory answer, Damien darted his gaze toward the most robust recruit in the ranks. "Kyle, you haven't forgotten the plan, have you? Listen for my signal, then just slam straight into whoever is in front of you with all your might." He guaranteed it directly and breezily. What's there to worry about? I'm quite confident in my brute strength. And waiting until both sides had set up their formations, the instructor immediately shouted his declaration at the highest volume. The match begins. As the attacking side, naturally, Squad 2 utilized a triangular formation, charging forward at maximum speed. Smash them to pieces. Chavo's group gripped the wooden shields in their hands to resist the incoming pressure, while not forgetting to call out, "Hold your positions, guys. Don't let the formation break." The Squad 2 side personally encountered difficulties in their assault, making the whole crowd unable to believe it. What the hell is wrong with these guys? There isn't a single opening. They look like a solid fortress wall. Observing from the high platform, the instructor couldn't help but blurt out an evaluation. Squad 2 is attacking first, but Squad 1's formation looks a bit strange, doesn't it? Arranging such a dense formation like that will only leave them standing still and taking hits. What can they possibly achieve? Little did he know that at the very next moment, a raw, rough roar echoed through the space, drawing the attention of Nolan's group right as they pushed forward. It turned out that the source of that sound was none other than Kyle, who was excitedly overwhelming the opposing group. Everyone on Squad 2 was extremely panicked. Our formation is being pushed back. Alex, as the flag bearer, gritted his teeth and relayed orders that were nearly meaningless to the subordinates who had been pushed to the point of being unable to lift their heads. "Hold your ground." I said, "Hold your ground." The delicate eyebrows kept furrowing tightly with every burst of roaring. "Those bastards were the attacking side, you know. Shut your mouths and focus on defending." But at the next moment, Damien, standing in a position to oversee the entire situation, only shouted one word, "Kyle." No need for cumbersome instructions. That alone was enough to be the switch that activated his madness. "This time, I'm going all out." Facing the terrifying momentum from the opponent, the morale of the entire second squad dropped to the bottom of the abyss. What the hell is that? What's up with that monster? He didn't even bother using a shield. He's slamming straight in with his shoulder. And it was precisely because of this over-the-top charge that the teammates under Damien's command had to speed up their run toward the leader. Kyle urged them immediately, "Stand by me." At the next moment, even though Squad 1 was the defending side, they became the aggressors as Kyle decisively surged into the enemy's battle formation, pushing forward. Facing this horrifying scene, Alex himself had to turn pale with gritted teeth. Why are they so perfectly coordinated? Their training time was clearly the same as ours, minus a bit. Possessing sharp eyes, Damien quickly seized the entire moment as he shouted his order. An opening. Squad 1, total attack, without any rest. A new attack wave unfolded so fiercely that white smoke billowed in the wide space. Witnessing the whole situation unfolding in such an unbelievable direction, Nolan couldn't help but stutter as he turned to ask Brian, who was in charge of the boys' group. "What is this? Leader of the first platoon, did you make them practice over time?" He hesitated for a long time before replying. "I'm surprised too." Deep down, fear surged along with beads of sweat rolling down his cheeks. He never expected these kids who had just learned the basics to perform this excellently. This level is no different from elite soldiers trained intensively. He directed his gaze toward the quiet figure behind the energetic army. And the reason they could pull this off was, of course, because of that kid. Now, in Brian's eyes, Damien was showing his own decisiveness at the moment he gave out the appropriate orders. Split wide to both sides to make space. This match, we have to shatter the second squad's formation completely. The memory of the moment he caught sight of their training practice resurfaced in his mind. Squad 1 volunteered to stay back and practice extra every single day. And Damien even stepped in to make up for their weak points. Henry is finally reaping the rewards now. Meanwhile, each member under his command was showing the steadfastness and skills he had taught them. Raise your shields, don't let them drop below your shoulders. Just do exactly what Damien said. Looking at the results unfolding in a positive direction, Brian could not control his surging excitement. At first, I was worried that a kid his age being a squad leader wouldn't work out, but he's proven it with his actual ability. At the moment he saw Alex in his line of sight, Damien shouted decisively, "Kyle!" Right now, their mental connection was at its peak. Just a few words were enough for him to understand Damien's intention. "Where did you put the flag?" Flashing teeth, so white they could advertise toothpaste, Alex was startled and panicked when he discovered him. "Gotcha." At this point, the panic surged, making Alex so disoriented that sweat poured all over his body. "Stop that guy quickly." Forget attacking. Just focus on stopping him. In contrast to the spirit that was all but gone on the Squad 2 side, Squad 1 was still burning with terrifying momentum. "Not so fast, guys, regroup." Amidst the thick white smoke, Kyle even leisurely let out an amused smile. "You idiots." The ones opposite were all stunned. "What? Why is that guy strong as an ox just standing still?" The arc of excitement on his lips never dipped for a second. "You guys fell right into our trap." He successfully caused no small amount of panic to the leaders. A trap. While they were still startled by the announcement from the opponent, a figure had kicked off the ground and rushed forward like the wind with the characteristic small feet of a 13-year-old. The person was none other than Damien, who possessed agile movements. "Well done." Kyle threw his small body into midair. His sharp eyes focused on only one single target. Alex hadn't even had time to react before the tip of the stick in Damien's hand poked straight into the middle of his opponent's chest. The force was so violent that it knocked him down to the rough ground. At the moment he erupted in a roar of pain, the instructor also chose the right time to announce, "Time's up." Since the attacking side, Squad 2, did not capture the flag directly, Damien directly stepped on his opponent to pose, raising the red flag high and immediately continuing the spirited declaration, "We won." And of course, after the exhausting match, the blue-hair instructor would not forget to say, "Take a short break, and then the two sides will switch fields." The people behind him couldn't help but exclaim, "Truly impressive. At this rate, Squad 1 will probably have an overwhelming winning streak." However, there was one person who retorted decisively, "Not necessarily. It's not that certain yet." A finger wrapped in the red glove of the uniform pointed straight in one direction. "Look over there. That's skill level." At this point, The remaining two teams were still in a fierce battle according to his assessment. Wouldn't they be a worthy opponent for Squad 1? Possessing a surge of rage no different from a volcanic eruption, a recruit stomped his feet crazily. Damn it all. Damn fate. It turned out to be a certain squad leader observing the situation, slowly turning disadvantageous for himself. Squad 3, our first opponent. I only intended for this match to be a warm-up before going over to crush that Squad 1 group, but with Hayden and the shield-bearing team, clearly the person sinking into furious thought was none other than Mason. Why is this insect standing still, not moving an inch? My defensive turn already lost miserably if I lose this one too. Then, in the end, unable to suppress the anger surging in his stomach, he roared with meaningless words. What are you all doing? Forgot the plan entirely? Do exactly what I told you. Sure enough, at the very next second, he received a wave of challenging reproaches from his subordinates. If you're so good, come in and do it yourself. What kind of squad leader are you? Only good at hiding behind our backs and talking nonsense. In Mason's mind, he went crazy. Damn it, the coordination is like garbage. Plus, no one has any motivation at all. At the same time, on the Squad 3 side, Riel, as the leader, calmly raised the issue with the teenager beside him. Eiffel, the guys on the other side look exhausted. Shall we rush in and break their formation? He decisively shook his head as he replied, no need. The next second, he just calmly laid out the plan with blue pupils that clearly showed confidence. Just hold your positions and target their shield bearers. That's enough. Just drag out the time, and they'll crumble on their own. Regarding this from his opponent, he just nodded in acceptance without the slightest rebuttal, even though the boy was clearly younger than him. Okay, let's do it. His mind raced continuously. Eiffel didn't expect a 13-year-old kid to grasp the situation and the enemy's weaknesses so quickly. With his own sharp eyes, Riel quickly had some suspicions about the opponent's identity. We've only met for 2 weeks, but I'm really curious about his family background. This kid is clearly a commoner. Surely he couldn't. But not letting this bother him for too long, he decisively deployed the necessary instructions. Everyone, focus all your pressure on their shield bearers for me. Maintain the formation and hold your positions. And so, a terrifying collision occurred once again with a no-retreat attitude. Hayden, as the leader, shouted loudly and challengingly with furrowed brows. If you bastards are good enough, come in and fight. Stop playing those cowardly stalling games. But just being loud was enough for Riel to get a clear assessment of the current situation. The stamina and spirit of the 4th squad have hit rock bottom. The best-case scenario is that they lose patience and rush in themselves. Contrary to what he anticipated, Hayden, who was just shouting a second ago, was now so discouraged he was foaming at the mouth. I can't hold on anymore. No matter what happened, the signal had arrived. Riel immediately shouted the command to the members in front of him. Squad 3, the opportunity is here. The whole group immediately braced themselves to charge in to break the defensive position of the 4th squad with strength and mighty roars, regardless of how exhausted they were. Hayden's group still tried to use their entire bodies as an anchor to hold their positions. Don't fall, guys. If the shield bearers fall, it's a real pity. But things could not be handled easily when Riel turned his head and called Eiffel's name. Just waiting for that. The opponent had just finished his sentence when it was time for him to charge toward the shields arranged in layers, and just stepped on them without hesitation. Clearly, this was a launching pad designed specifically for this situation. Sure enough, at the next moment, Eiffel directly launched himself high into the air. Similar to what Damien had done minutes ago, possessing terrifying mana power, he didn't waste any and converged it into the stick in his hand. Using only his own strength, Eiffel easily made the 4th squad collapse in a shocking way. Witnessing this scene from a position considered safe, Mason was terrified to the point that his eyebrows furrowed tightly. What the hell are you doing? You bunch of useless hacks. His mind didn't even forget the bet made with Damien. Damn it, fighting like this, how can I beat Squad 1? And at that very moment, from the corner of his eye, he saw the leisurely figure of the kid. Witnessing the lackluster performance from a not too far, not too close distance, he sighed. It's over. Sure enough, the instructor's voice rang out immediately after. The training match is over. Squad 3 wins. Looking at the person being cheered under the clear blue sky, Damien immediately had a realization. That guy Eiffel is definitely not to be trifled with. He will be a tough opponent. Turning his back to leave decisively, his mind began to shift. In the end, the real battle will have to be against Squad 3. Blazing with the mana power he had upgraded himself, the corners of his mouth lifted in an excited arc, looking forward to it. Aren't you? See you in the finals, Eiffel. After a period of rest for the squads who had just gone through the exhausting battle, the instructor stood up to announce, "Break is over. All squads assemble at the training ground immediately." At the moment of moving forward, Kyle forgot to pose the question to the person next to him to confirm again. "Hey, Damien, we're smashing the 4th squad this match, right?" He just calmly replied with a look of boredom. "Exactly. This is their last chance. They'll definitely struggle to earn 1 point of honor. Just watch." Meanwhile, Kyle was completely exposed in front of his chest as his satisfaction flared up with a toothy grin from ear to ear. "That's what makes it fun. I'll break the mouth of the guy who dared to open his mouth and call you a kid." Damien casually brushed it off. "I've already booked that guy. Just clear the way for me is enough." Facing his subordinates, he didn't have any fear as he listed the weaknesses of the opponent. Okay, the enemy is exhausted and their coordination is like trash, radiating an evil aura so strong that even the blue sky had to step aside. Damien stated clearly, emphasizing every word. "But I don't intend to go easy. We even have to attack faster and hit harder. This match, we have to crush them completely." Right after his last word fell, Kyle's group was brimming with excitement as he burst into a thrilling laugh. "I've been waiting for this moment. They have to pay for their big mouths." Waiting until everyone finished shouting their excitement, he, as the leader, immediately straightened his face and instructed, "Finish it off quickly, so everyone focus." No one had any opposing opinions. Logan's group still kept their corners of their mouths high as they replied, "Agreed." And then, at the next moment, the whole group of Squad 1 was in position, everyone burning with determination and seriousness on their faces. In contrast to them was the group full of apprehension belonging to the 4th squad, because they had just lost to Squad 3 in a quite miserable way. Not only did he delineate the difference between the two armies, but Damien, as the leader, kept a confident expression, while the guy Mason was always as annoyed as if he owed him dozens of silver coins, under the instructor's voice. The match begins, carrying a terrifying momentum. Squad 1 took the initiative to attack along with resounding shouts. "Let's go, guys!" Not long after, both sides shortened the distance with his group, maintaining their formation while charging forward. Contrary to when he was only observing Squad 2 from behind, now Damien could directly witness the execution of the 4th squad to plan accordingly. Their defensive formation looks looser than I thought. At this level, just charging straight and will break them. And then his mouth corners lifted at a 45-degree angle, filled with confidence at the moment he prepared himself. But it has to be done thoroughly and perfectly. I will crush them to smithereens so that from now on, no one dares to chirp. Possessing coordination to an absolute level, relying on the release force, Damien pushed the biggest guy in the group, Hart. Just by combining their strength, a fierce collision unfolded on 2 different sides. And clearly, the 4th squad had encountered no small shock from the violent wind created by Damien himself. What is this? What kind of demonic strength is this? Being the one who always stood in the safest position, Mason didn't understand anything other than shouting with surging confusion. "What are the others doing? Tighten your muscles and hold a defensive line. You useless hack." At this point, sweat poured out his body, no different from a late autumn downpour. The shield-bearing team protect the flag and quickly block their direct attack. And the spear-bearing team. Unfortunately, while he was still blabbering, both Kyle and Damien had repeated the technique they had shown when fighting against Squad 2. In a split second, Mason could only startle at the sight of him hovering in the vast space. "I told you I'd remember your face, didn't I? It's you." Clenching his teeth tightly, a feeling of impending danger surged so intensely that Mason didn't know how to react other than just standing there. There wasn't a hint of surprise. His right arm was thoroughly crippled by him. By the time Damien landed gently on the ground, Mason had already collapsed, clutching his painful shoulder. However, anger clouded his judgment, allowing him to forget the pain as he hissed through his teeth with deep hatred. "You bastard." When people are like that, it should be in moderation. It was no surprise he carried such deep resentment toward Damien. He didn't hesitate at all when picking up the wooden stick he had dropped. "Do you take me for a scarecrow?" And at that very moment, Mason charged forward as if the kick he just took meant nothing. In a fair one-on-one fight, a lowlife like you wouldn't be worth a rusted nail. Exhaling in frustration, for someone trained through countless battles like Damien, his attack was too pathetic and entirely predictable. Not even bothering to waste more time, he decisively grabbed the tip of his opponent's stick. "Is this really all you've got?" Clearly, Mason's strength was enough to hold onto that last piece of wood. Just like that, dropping the shield from his hand, he casually performed a beautifully fluid stick-twirling display. Just like that, his weapon was sent flying. In the next moment, he didn't hesitate to decisively land another kick right on the same wound he had struck earlier, stepping coolly onto the enemy. Killing intent, filled with bloodlust, radiated from Damien with every word. Dropping your weapon on the battlefield is no different than kneeling and begging for your own demise. "You idiot." Not stopping at mere intimidation, his fist tightened as he gathered mana. "Keep this day carved into your heart, because this is useful advice for your future survival. Understand." Witnessing this horrifying scene, the instructor finally couldn't stand by and rushed over in a hurry. "Leader of the 4th Squad, are you all right?" He just sighed again, discouraged probably for the umpteenth time that day. "Too easy. It's not even worth talking about." Meanwhile, the instructor, having personally experienced the sharp, intense gaze of the squad, hesitated before announcing, "I declare that the 4th Squad is no longer capable of continuing the match." At this moment, Damien's hand was picking up the wooden stick before what he followed up with. Therefore, the victory in this match was undisputed. He raised a blue flag high in his hand amidst the declaration from the instructor belonging to the 1st Squad. Despite having just gone through an exhausting match, Ka was still full of energy and laughed heartily. That felt great. Another recruit happily chimed in. "Damien is definitely something else, truly top tier." Seeing Mason being carried away by 2 people on a stretcher, the members of the 4th Squad were truly terrified. Didn't they say that squad leader of the 1st Squad was only 13? How can his skill level be that overwhelming? Observing from the high platform, someone finally couldn't help but exclaim, "He's a born genius." Nielsen became even more convinced as he gave his assessment. He might even be better than us instructors. Dude DOP next to him also laughed while nodding in agreement with what he uttered. "I can't even argue with that." Unexpectedly, a larger figure appeared beside them and raised a question. "What are you guys talking about so excitedly?" And this scene successfully drew his attention and confusion. Facing them at that moment was none other than Leon Hart Belcan, the chief instructor of the 3rd Division of the Baroque Kingdom. Clearly seeing who had arrived, no one dared to delay as they straightened their postures. "Hail! Glory to the kingdom." Not bothering to pay attention to them, Leon Hart went straight to the main subject in his sight. "Brian, is that the kid you told me about?" Directing his gaze toward Damien, who was being lifted by the entire 1st Squad for their overwhelming victory, he nodded to confirm his superior's question. "Yes, that's him, sir." With his lips curling into an interested arc, Leon Hart slowly let out each word. "It seems an interesting factor has just appeared." And then time passed, and the recruits returned to their quarters. A young man suddenly opened the door to the 1st Squad's bedroom and yelled, "Oh, what the hell?" While chatting with other teammates, Damien had a turn to ask about Chevelvo's panic. "What are you guys making such a fuss about?" He quickly reported, "I think some big shot just visited our training camp." Recalling the scene he had accidentally witnessed, Chevelvo was still full of shock. "I heard it's an extremely famous instructor from the 3rd Division. That uncle is already a legend in the training world." Hangdi looked at his teachers, who looked as blank as if they had lost their minds. Hearing the special term, he immediately stood up and asked a logical question. "The instructor from the 3rd Division, what's his name?" Rubbing his hair, he tried to remember and replied, "I just heard a moment ago, but suddenly I forgot it. His name is Leon Hart something, I think." So at the next moment, he corrected the name that had been lingering in his brain accurately, Leon Hart. Sure enough, hearing it, Chevelvo immediately nodded and mentioned, "That's right. That's the name." Leon Hart. Before he could finish speaking, he had already walked past him, making him startle and wonder. "Damien, where are you going?" Running straight down the corridor, the stoic and hurried look of the squad leader left Chevelvo deep in confusion. What on earth is wrong with him? Meanwhile, he didn't care about anything around him and only focused on the essential content moving through his mind. I have to see it with my own eyes. If it really is him. Unexpectedly, just as Damien wanted to find out for sure, Leon Hart had gradually closed the distance with him from the opposite direction. His appearance naturally attracted his attention. "Isn't that the soldier Damien from earlier?" Seeing this, Brian became overjoyed as he expressed, "Damien, I was just about to look for you." Unexpectedly, at the next moment, he closed the distance with both of them and seriously performed the most standard salute. "Glory to the kingdom." Facing this greeting from him, Leon Hart calmly asked for confirmation. "Your name is Damien, right?" Naturally, it was his own name, so he didn't hesitate to admit, "Yes, that's me." The atmosphere suddenly sank into silence as he lost himself in thought. The 3rd Division is indeed linked to Training Camp Number 3, but that place is so far away that I thought it would take a long time to meet him. No matter what, the happiness in Damien upon meeting the person closest to him in his previous life was countless. "Long time no see. The person who had the biggest influence on my life, master." On the long corridor, upon seeing Damien salute respectfully, Leon Hart spoke up to confirm the information. "You are Damien?" Keeping a calm demeanor on the outside, interest had long since sparked in his heart. That stiff Brian kept praising the kid, so I had to come see for myself. Feeling the mana flow in the opponent's body, he silently praised. "He's practicing a top-tier mana manipulation method, isn't he?" Stroking his chin in thought while evaluating the teenager before him from head to toe. Finally, Leon Hart suddenly spoke. "I watched earlier. Your spearmanship is also quite something. Have you aimed for any unit after graduation?" Hearing that question, Damien fell into deep thought for a moment. "The unit I want to join?" His lips moved several times as if organizing words. "I don't need to go through any restlessness or worrying for too long." He decisively made a statement with a face clearly showing excitement. "I intend to join the Neoic unit." The moment that neat answer echoed in the quiet atmosphere, it immediately made Leon Hart startle in surprise. "Are you serious?" Because compared to other organizations, Neoic is not to be trifled with, being one of the units in the 3rd Division. Their duty is to wipe out monsters overflowing from the Bronzerian forest. That place is the most dangerous and harsh environment. People lose their lives every year. Because he understood everything, Leon Hart felt even more incredulous and curious about Damien's choice. Why on earth would you throw yourself into a place like that? Wouldn't living a comfortable life as a royal administrative official be better? His eyes looked straight at him, and he spoke with unwavering determination. "Because only there can I become strong." Receiving a determined answer, Leon Hart couldn't help but smile interestedly. "If you want, I can write a letter of recommendation for you." The words he just uttered left Brian startled and hurriedly reminded him, "Instructor, that place is reserved only for the nobility." Facing a door that countless people are willing to trade everything to touch, Damien refused. "I am very grateful for your offer, but I have already decided. Because I have clearly defined my goal, there is someone there I must meet. I traveled all the way to this 3rd Division just to find that man." Seeing the determination in his every word and choice, Leon Hart did not continue to persuade him further. "Since it is your decision, I will not stand in your way. You go back and rest." Before leaving, Brian still couldn't help but turn his head to look at Damien and complain, "You kid, do you know you just missed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? A normal knight order only accepts nobles, but having a letter of recommendation from an instructor is different." So he immediately turned to Leon Hart with an urgent look, pleading for a chance for the 13-year-old. "Instructor, I think Damien is too young to understand what he just gave up. Let me go talk to him and see." But instead of agreeing, he suddenly spoke. "Do you really think that kid chose the wrong path?" While he didn't know how to answer, he remembered the image of Damien when he declined the offer. Maybe you didn't see the look in his eyes earlier. Speaking up to this point, he couldn't help but laugh interestedly at such a rare teenager. I don't know where that kid came from. Only 13 years old, but truly brave. No joke. Carrying that thought, with a satisfied look still lingering on his face, he discouraged him. Don't force him anymore. Just leave him be. As long as he is in the 3rd Division, we will definitely cross paths again. A day off passed, and the next morning was the match between Squad 1 and Squad 3. Looking at the opposing team, Damien reminded everyone, "You saw it yesterday, Squad 3 is not easy to deal with." Pausing for a beat to get everyone's attention, he continued with a calm attitude, "But I guarantee you one thing. At this point, there's no squad in this training camp that can make things difficult for us anymore." That forceful assertion immediately raised the morale of the whole team. Kyle chimed in with satisfaction. "We're really strong, aren't we?" After 2 overwhelming victories before, the whole squad was even more fired up. Damien curled his lips with determination. "Crush them. Just do as usual." The moment he finished, the instructor's resounding voice echoed throughout the open area. "Squad 3 will attack first." The match begins. As soon as the command rang out, Damien immediately raised his hand to instruct. "Regroup." In just a few short seconds, the whole team formed a tight defensive formation that briefly surprised Riel. "Isn't that formation the same one they used against Squad for yesterday?" Eiffel on the side observed carefully and commented, "Admittedly, it looks solid." Looking at the wall of people Squad 1 had just built, he squinted in calculation and directly emphasized every word. "Eiffel, you play an extremely important role in this match. You know what to do, right?" Without needing any further explanation, he just nodded. Yes. Under his coordination, the members of Squad 3 simultaneously shifted and linked together in solid layers. Go. The order having been issued, both sides immediately fell into a brutal collision. With furrowed brows, he immediately adjusted his tactics. All the guys rushed up, observing that familiar control style. Riel just frowned slightly, startled to realize it was the same old trick as yesterday. In that tense moment, he suddenly shouted clearly, "Eiffel, right now." The moment the signal was given, those standing on the front line immediately split to both sides to make way for a wide corridor right in the middle of the formation. That sudden change made Damien briefly stunned as his vision locked onto the gap that had just appeared. What? Did they break their own formation? What kind of trick are they planning? Unlike the attack that needed a launching pad like yesterday, this time, Eiffel immediately dashed forward along the open path. After just a few breaths, he closed in on his target and swung his stick straight at a member of the opposing team. The developments happened so fast that even Damien, who had a firm grasp of the situation, had to pause. Realizing the plan had taken effect, Riel immediately seized the opportunity. Eiffel's punch hit the target, dig deep into that gap quickly. At that very moment, Kyle, possessing a robust body, crouched into a ready position with 2 shields. "You think I'll let you run wild, do you?" The charge that was supposed to be fired up with momentum was forced to a halt by him alone, causing them extreme panic. "You bastard! What kind of demonic strength is this?" Standing behind the front line, Damien silently breathed a sigh of relief. Facing the sudden development that just occurred, luckily Kyle blocked that dangerous blow. Remembering the scene, he couldn't help but exclaim internally, "But that kid Eiffel is truly top tier, punching the shield bearer away with 1 hit." Meanwhile, he on the other side of the team was also observing Kyle and sighed. "What kind of monster is he? He clearly looks like a northerner. So why did he wander into this training camp number 3? Quickly pushing that thought aside, because ahead, there was a much more concerning problem. Whatever the reason, this was starting to get troublesome. That muscle head has locked me down completely. Suddenly, the pre-match exchange between Kyle and Damien surfaced in his mind. "Kyle, your only job is to lock down Eiffel for me. As long as you block him, no one can break our formation." Hearing the name, he couldn't help but be confused. "Who is Eiffel?" He smiled mysteriously. "You'll know as soon as you see him." Returning to the ongoing match, Kyle still stood tall before the front line like a wall and just grinned with a self-assured look. "Let's see how much you guys are worth." Seeing the obstacle ahead, still showing no signs of wavering, Riel slowly took a step forward and asked, "Eiffel, can you pierce through?" Knowing this was not an easy opponent to handle, he still had no intention of backing down. It has to be done. Feeling the pressure from the opponent, Eiffel immediately scanned the entire plan in his head to find a way to break it. I can't beat this guy with pure brute strength. If so, he slowly closed his eyes and poured all his strength into the spear in his hand. There's only one way left. In the next moment, he suddenly roared and launched himself straight into the air, aiming for Kyle's position. The weapon came down with terrifying force, but he still managed to raise his shield to block it in time. The teammates standing behind immediately cheered excitedly. He blocked it. Kyle is truly something else. But little did they know Eiffel's lips were now curling mysteriously. All right, you like blocking, do you? As soon as the thought flashed, the spear in his hand continued to push the attack with a surge of mana full of power. Then I'll just smash until you're shattered to pieces. Gritting his teeth to take each blow heavy as a sledgehammer, Kyle couldn't help but feel incredulous. Damn it, how is a kid the same age as Damien so insanely strong? As he finished his thought, the shield in his hand couldn't hold out anymore and shattered. Damn it. Pulling the spear back, Eiffel poured all his remaining strength into the final strike. Let's end it here. With nothing left to defend, Kyle could only raise both arms in front of him and prepare to take the incoming attack. But right at the moment when victory and defeat were only a hair's breadth apart, a figure suddenly dashed out from the side. Damien appeared at the right time and used the mana-coated shield in his hand to block Eiffel's blow. By the time he realized who was standing in his way, he couldn't help but call his opponent's name in surprise. Damien. Just as a new confrontation was about to erupt, a signal suddenly echoed through the air. That sound made everyone stop simultaneously and direct their attention toward the source. Standing in the middle of the field, the instructor quickly announced the result. Time's up. Because the attacking side, Squad 3, did not capture the flag before the allotted time, Squad 3 loses. Hearing that verdict, Eiffel immediately clenched his fists tightly with a look of unwillingness. Did that big guy block all my attacks? Damn it, I thought I could finish it off neatly. On the other side, Damien turned his gaze toward his friend, who was still breathing heavily after the block, and asked, Kyle, are you all right? He slowly replied, trying to sound tough. Of course I'm fine. He went silent for a beat, then made a decision. Sit out the second round and rest. This surprised him. Don't joke. Not a single bone is broken, so don't worry. I'm Phoenix. However, to protect him, he stood his ground and reiterated the importance. We still have 2 full weeks of training ahead. If you get a serious injury here, you might as well forget about graduating. Damien didn't stop there, but quickly switched to another plan. Instead, just stand guard over the flag in the middle of the field. I only trust you with that. If the flag is lost, it's all on you. A brief silence, then a light smile as he realized he was truly concerned for him. You want to save my face while also worrying about me? Damien, and are we attacking this round? Why are we suddenly talking about guarding the flag? Not wanting to prolong the back and forth, he decisively grabbed what was given to him and spoke with a tone of assurance. Rest assured, I won't let anyone touch it. You just go out there and smash them. A few short moments of rest passed, and the instructor's voice rang out once again. Switch sides. Squad 1 prepares to attack. Before the formation was fully stabilized, Damien swept his gaze across every teammate's face and cheered them on. I know everyone is exhausted, but this is the final match of the tournament. Let's go, guys. We're attacking this round, so I have no intention of stalling until the end. His eyes gradually grew sharper, determination evident in every feature. 5 minutes. Damien turned, facing the opposing battle line with a super serious expression. Of course, not only was he determined, but the Squad 3 side was also filled with fighting spirit. So his voice rang out once again throughout the wide space with a firm tone. We will snatch their flag and seal our victory within 5 minutes. Before the match officially began, Squad 1 and Squad 3 stood facing each other with high spirits. Directing his observation toward the enemy team, Damien silently tightened his determination internally. Finally, the final match of the tournament has arrived. Each battle experienced, and each time leading teammates through difficulties appeared in his mind. I have shown everything I needed to as a squad leader. Now is the time to make the instructors carve this name into their memories. Thinking that far, His lips slowly curled up excitedly. The name Damien continued to look forward. The fighting spirit in his heart burned more and more fiercely, especially if he could win against Squad 3 and that AFL in this match. Then the position of most excellent recruit would be 100% guaranteed. Among the enemy ranks, his figure quickly entered his sight. It seems he intends to stand guard over the flag himself. With his energy depleted that much, it's a pity to send him to the front line to command. Despite the pity, this was destined from the moment the match began. This way, there would definitely be a direct collision. The atmosphere on the field immediately grew tense as the announcement echoed throughout the area. Squad 1 attacks, Squad 3 defends. The final inter-squad match begins. As soon as the command finished, Damien immediately turned to look at his team and shouted loudly, "Pedal to the metal from the very start. Now everyone, high focus and charge forward after me." A chorus of responses rang out with high spirits. Understood. Immediately after, the entire Squad 1 quickly moved according to the pre-prepared formation and simultaneously charged toward the enemy's battle position, causing those witnessing the scene to be nothing short of amazed. What the hell? Why are they moving so fast? Running at that speed without the formation shifting by even an inch. The more he observed, the more clearly Riel felt the pressure the opponent brought. Squad 1, led by that Damien, is really not to be trifled with. The thought flashed through, and he immediately issued instructions. Raise your shields high. Watch out for their squad leader. But as soon as the order was transmitted, Damien stepped out of the formation with lightning speed. It's useless. Mana in his body immediately surged to the arm gripping the spear. At the moment the distance between the two sides was shortened to the limit, he struck decisively. With this one hit, I'll pierce through. The defensive layer originally built to block the first wave of attacks immediately shook violently. The striker on the opponent's side hurriedly shouted, "The shield has been pierced." Faced with Damien's overwhelming power, the key defensive point of Squad 3 almost collapsed in a flash. Achieving his goal, he immediately shouted to signal the teammates behind. The line is broken. Witnessing the terrifying scene that had just occurred in an instant, Riel immediately commanded loudly, "No! Block them quickly." Orders were continuously transmitted with a desperate determination to stop the target. Must take them down. At this very moment, as the encirclement was about to close, Damien's pupils suddenly flared with determination. As the attacks were simultaneously directed at him, his figure had already dashed out of its original position, thanks to his flexible use of his body. And so, at the moment the pile of sticks from the enemy hit the ground, the target was no longer there. His figure continuously pierced through the gaps in the enemy ranks, forcing many Squad 3 members to stumble and fall. While my ankles kept moving, Damien still didn't forget to turn his head and shout loudly to the back. Squad 1 regroup. Kyle and the remaining members immediately accelerated and rushed forward to deal with the recruits in a state of panic. You've made it all the way here? Witnessing that scene, Riel's face couldn't help but change color as it tightened through each stage. Impossible. How could they get here this fast? Afel on the side quickly drew a conclusion. Regardless, that guy is the biggest threat. His eyebrows tightened as he evaluated the situation. As long as Damien is locked down, they won't stand a chance at touching the flag. Speaking of which, he handed the flag to his team captain and warned, "I'll hold him off. Make sure you keep the flag safe." The call slipped out of his mouth subconsciously, as Afel stared at the back of the figure preparing to step onto the battlefield. Complicated emotions stirred within Riel. "I never thought I'd have to rely on this kid in a situation like this." Seeing Afel slowly walking through the swirling dust, Damien concluded, "Finally, it's come down to the final showdown." That image involuntarily brought back memories from his past life. The future general, Afel. While Damien was still lost in his thoughts, Afel suddenly launched himself into the air and appeared right above his head. Faced with that sudden ambush, he remained calm. If he wanted to test his skills against someone like him, this was his chance. While tilting his body to dodge the incoming attack, his mind continued to work tirelessly. The first strike was just a feint. Realizing his opponent's intention, the corners of Damien's mouth curled up with excitement. If that's how it is, his vision remained locked onto every shift in Eifel's attack. As the next strike was quickly launched, this one was clearly the real deal. The weapon in his hand was immediately raised, catching the downward swing head-on and creating a violent shockwave between the two clashing mana sources. The attack, which had been meticulously calculated, was countered with such precision that it took Eiffel by surprise. However, he quickly adjusted his rhythm and retreated backward. Meanwhile, Damien gripped his weapon tightly, channeling mana into it continuously. "Give it everything you've got." Eiffel, the fighting spirit in his heart, grew stronger with each passing moment. The distance between them was erased in an instant because he was also going to give his all to take him down. As the powerful technique came crashing down, Eiffel barely managed to raise his weapon to defend against it. Naturally, Damien wouldn't give up right there, so he decisively raised the staff in his hand once again, and then another brutal blow struck down. The force transmitted through the weapon made Eiffel's expression flicker. The amount of mana was so strong that it nearly snapped his spear in two, continuously parrying the relentless attacks from the front. The more they fought, the more stunned and suspicious Eiffel became. Is this guy really a commoner? Don't tell me he's just like me. His curiosity grew greater than ever regarding this variable named Damien. How could he possibly control mana with such mastery? Facing the surge of energy still swirling powerfully before him, Eiffel couldn't help but smile bitterly to himself. "I never thought I'd hit such an immovable wall at this rinky-dink training camp." After exchanging blows for a while, Damien suddenly withdrew his stance and said calmly, "Shall we end this match?" Eiffel, he immediately unleashed the entire force building up in his body, turning it into a shockwave that surged straight forward. "There's no way you can block this one." The spear tip tore through the wind, instantly shattering the weapon, shielding his chest, and striking Eiffel squarely without a moment's hesitation. The overwhelming pressure sent him flying back, and he rolled several times across the ground. Straining to stand back up, Eiffel frowned as pain radiated throughout his body. Seizing the opportunity while his opponent was unable to stop him, Damien immediately bypassed him and accelerated toward the target. Behind him, he could only watch helplessly, unable to do anything. Damn it! His vision began to blur, but he still tried to reach toward his team's emblem. In a split second, Damien successfully grabbed the flag and held it high above his head amidst the coach's booming voice. "Team 1 wins." Witnessing that scene, Eiffel could only grit his teeth and accept the outcome. Carrying the flag in his hand, Damien quickly approached the person who had just given him such a good fight, then reached out to pull the other up and offered his praise. "Great match, Eiffel." He nodded in response. "Congratulations, but I won't lose next time." Before that determined declaration, Damien flashed a bright smile as he suggested, "In that case, let's go to the platoon next time. I don't think I have the stamina to put you through this a second time." Facing that sun-drenched, radiant smile, Eiffel didn't feel even a hint of annoyance. Once he was steady on his feet, he tapped him on the chest and replied, "All right, enough with the false modesty." In Damien's heart, excitement blossomed when he thought about the future. "I actually managed to defeat Eiffel Van Chiu. Who knows, this experience might unintentionally turn him into an even more terrifying monster." Quickly brushing that aside, Damien turned his head toward his cheering teammates. "But that's a concern for later. For now, I've got to enjoy the joy of victory with the guys." Meanwhile, at a spot not far from the training area, the coach watched it all and concluded calmly, "So everything wraps up with a victory for Team 1. I must ensure the remaining 2 weeks of training go just as smoothly." Hearing this, Leon Hart behind him just smiled and confirmed, "That's right." For now, his gaze remained fixed on the moment Damien was enjoying the cheers from his team. Let the kids savor the sweet taste of victory for a while. Kyle stood stunned before the table of food laid out so enticingly. "What is this? Is this for real?" He couldn't hide his excitement mixed with hunger as he shouted, "We're getting a feast right here at the training camp." Winning that team tournament was worth every bit of effort. Watching his teammates wolf down every piece of meat, Damien whispered to himself in admiration, "Look at how energetic they are after just exhausting themselves." But then again, it's not every day we get to stuff our faces with this much meat. He looked around, searching for someone. "Master, looks like he's already gone. What a shame. I still wanted to talk to him a bit more. Suddenly, Raymond appeared, wanting to join in. Mind if I sit here? A student immediately stood up, scrambling to offer his seat. Coach. Yes, of course. Please go ahead and sit. He sat down comfortably beside him, showing clear curiosity. Damien, are you still sticking with your decision from yesterday? I'm talking about Coach Leon Hart's offer. He didn't react much, simply replying, Yes, that's right, sir. Hearing this, Raymond could only smile helplessly. What a pity, such a rare opportunity. He then glanced over to probe him. But have you heard about this yet? Damien was naturally curious. Heard about what, sir? Raymond recounted an event that had taken place recently. Coach Leon Hart also extended an invitation to join the Night Order to Eiffel. Can you guess what his answer was? Yet, he remained calm, stating, Whatever he chooses, I'll respect it. Eiffel's life is his own to decide. He couldn't help but laugh at that response. You really are a dull kid, aren't you? Raymond kept watching him for a few seconds before thinking to himself, I intended to come out here to convince you to rethink joining the Night Order, but it seems there's no swaying you now. If that's the case, he stood up and raised his glass, his voice full of goodwill. Listen up, everyone. You've all worked hard over the past 2 weeks. I wish you all the best. Tomorrow we're back to training. Get your minds ready. I hope you'll all train your hardest to achieve your individual goals. Everyone happily responded by raising their glasses in unison. Glory to the kingdom. Time flew by, and before they knew it, they had entered the third and final week of training. The coach crossed his arms over his chest and roared, urging them on. Stab harder. Come on, move it. Damien scanned the area, the corners of his mouth curling up with satisfaction as he realized the attitude of the recruits had clearly changed. And it wasn't just his team, but the entire third training camp was shifting in a more positive direction. It seems the recent team tournament was a massive catalyst. The coach's voice boomed. Attention, everyone. 5-minute break. Kyle came over, panting, to ask, Damien, have you heard the news? He turned, wondering what news. He leaned in and recounted what he'd gathered. I heard the morale of the fourth team has been absolutely miserable since that tournament. Their dropout rate is skyrocketing right now. He burst into gleeful laughter, especially the team captain over there. The moment the tournament flopped, he took off. Damien also smirked sarcastically. How pathetic. Suddenly, he turned and posed a question. But Kyle, you know what's most important right now, right? Damien faced everyone seriously and reminded them. It's true that we got a bunch of team points for winning the tournament, but if you want a decent position later, you need to worry about your individual scores. Everyone here dreams of stepping into the royal palace, right? The most coveted job any commoner recruit drools over. An administrative soldier in the royal palace. But out of the 160 people here, only 30 are allowed to apply. And even then, the internal competition is so cutthroat that only a third of the applicants actually get in. Kyle initially laughed it off. Sounds pretty intense. Damien glanced back, stating a cold, hard fact. Well, everyone who enlists here is aiming for that same goal. After all, realizing something was off, he grabbed his friend's shoulder and pressed him. Wait, don't tell me you're also aiming for that royal administrative seat. He sighed in frustration and explained, I have no intention of entering the royal palace. But Kyle didn't listen and pried further. Why not? Do you really like being a royal administrative soldier that much? Damien regained his composure to point out the harsh reality of vanity. Do you know that if you get in, you'll be buried inside that palace all day long? Causing him to freeze for a few seconds. I know, I guess it does feel a bit suffocating, but it's the best spot anyway. It'd be a waste of a golden opportunity not to take it. He brushed off his jacket and bluntly exposed him. Forget it. Someone like you wouldn't last a month in there before running for the hills. You're the type who likes to move, likes to show off. Wouldn't sitting still be boring as hell? Kyle couldn't argue, but he remained curious. Then where the hell are you planning to go? Damien looked up with a resolute gaze and declared, I'm joining Neoic. Just the mention of the name made everyone go pale. He was so shocked that his face twisted as he shouted, Neoic, is that the place I'm thinking of? Damien, you've officially gone crazy. He immediately got a kick to the shin. Shut your mouth. Kyle clutched his leg in pain, but started laughing. Damien, just like I thought. You were slightly surprised by that attitude. What was that? He looked up, enthusiastically shouting, "You really are a certified lunatic, and the kind with a plan, a reckless lunatic at that. But that's exactly why I like hanging out with you." Just then, the coach's voice reminded them, "Break's over, everyone get back to training." Kyle quickly stood up, urging as they walked, "Let's get back to it, because we just eliminated a major rival for the administrative slot." After the training session, Baru stepped onto the platform to speak. "Over the past month, you have all worked very hard." Damien listened in silence, but deep down he was deeply moved. "I can't believe the day we finished training is already here. It feels like we just enlisted yesterday." He looked down at the group of students, smiling encouragingly. "I will root for your future endeavors. After leaving this training camp, continue to fight and push forward so that you can contribute to the kingdom." Suddenly, Raymond looked toward him and whispered a reminder. Damien understood and immediately stood at attention, shouting loudly to coordinate the legion. "Attention! Salute the captain. Glory to the kingdom." After that, it was his turn to announce, "That's all. The closing ceremony for the training course ends here. Next, I will announce the list of the top 5 most outstanding recruits." Raymond began to reveal the first name. Team 1 Captain Damien. He added contentedly, "Congratulations." He beamed, quickly replying, "Yes, sir." His mind was floating on cloud 9. "Nice, I did it." Raymond continued to announce the second person. "Next is Afel of the 3rd team." He stepped forward and voiced his response, "Yes, sir." Then came the familiar names. Kyle of Team 1, Team 3, Captain Riel, and Team 2, Captain Alex. He finished the announcements and proposed, "The 5 of you, follow me as a reward. Each of you will receive a piece of equipment of your choice from the armory." Everyone followed him to a large door. Raymond on how to claim the prize. "You can take whatever is inside. We'll start with the person with the highest score. Damien, you go first." He was extremely excited as he entered. "Yes, sir." In his heart, he was celebrating. "This is the moment I've been waiting for all this time." Damien scanned the space and commented, "It's arranged quite neatly and orderly in here, isn't it?" He reached out to pick up a few things to inspect. "Is this a mana potion? I wonder if there's any hidden treasure in this vault I don't know about." He quickly put them back, telling himself to focus. "Doesn't look like it. Fine, I'll just grab what I need and get out of here." It's exactly as I heard. From a moment I stepped in here, my eyes haven't been able to leave it. Damien reached out to take something. "Found you." It turned out he was seizing a ring, the item that a subordinate at the 3rd training camp had tipped him off about. A ring capable of activating an invisibility charm for a split second when infused with mana. Once he had what he wanted, Damien quickly left. The rest of the recruits wouldn't even notice this ring, because none of them know how to use mana anyway. Until he walked past Afel, his mind changed. "Oh wait, except for one person." Raymond stood outside and announced, "Next is Afel. Go on in." He walked straight inside. "Yes, sir." He stood outside, waiting in silence. But didn't Afel take this ring in his past life? He definitely must have used mana to sense the ring's uniqueness. Damien's expression turned more serious. "Now I'm curious to see what he brings out instead." Seeing the other person come out just as quickly as he went in, he was taken aback. "He came out much faster than I thought." Had he already decided what to pick beforehand? Kyle, standing nearby, saw him lost in thought and asked, "Damien, is something wrong?" Damien quickly shook his head to deny it, but he had secretly noted everything down. It couldn't be wrong. The crest that Afel had just brought out. It was distinct from the family crest of a kingdom that had long since faded into the past. "I've always wondered how he knew how to use mana at such a young age." A thought flashed through his mind. "Don't tell me Afel has a deep connection to that ancient kingdom." Raymond locked the large door and asked, "All right, everyone has picked an item, right?" He rubbed his chin, pondering Afel's choice. "Afel, do you know what this is?" He explained very calmly. "I just felt a divine power from it, so I decided to take it." Raymond smiled with satisfaction at the other's insight, offering more information. "Divine power, that makes sense. This is a seal imbued with the power to ward off evil and misfortune." He looked over at the two standing nearby and marveled. "You chose the spear. Not bad at all. And that's a shield crafted by a master artisan." Finally, his gaze landed on him, and Raymond was somewhat hesitant. "And Damien, are you sure about that item?" That ring only helps you reduce a bit of your body weight. He was surprised to hear that and spoke up. Body weight, sir? He was briefly taken aback and offered. You just picked it blindly without knowing what it was? Let me try wearing it. But Damien had already quickly put it on himself. He then tried moving on the spot, his eyebrows arching in surprise. It seems it makes me lighter than I imagined. With this thing, I'll be able to move much faster on the battlefield. Raymond stepped forward, asking seriously, Are you satisfied with it? Damien nodded definitively and explained, Yes, it's actually much better than I thought. Yet in his heart, he was ecstatic. Invisibility and reduced weight. This ring really is an A-grade holy artifact. Raymond saw everyone was satisfied and announced the next step. Now, let's all head back. You guys also need to go submit your unit preference applications. Once in the room, Raymond handed out the forms with a request. You go ahead and fill it out too, Damien. You're still set on choosing the Neoic unit. He scanned the room and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. The more he thought about it, the more he felt it was a shame. If Damien joined a Night Order, he would definitely go far. Damien stopped writing and handed the form back to him. I'm finished, sir. Raymond reached out to take it. All right, he was still worried, so he reminded him more carefully. Of course, I know you can take care of yourself, but that place is extremely dangerous, so be careful. He nodded in response. Yes, sir. Thank you for your concern. Raymond finally sighed in relief and announced, You've worked hard all month. You should receive your notification in a few days and can head out. Damien bowed once more to express his gratitude. Thank you for everything. Coach. He pushed the door and left the room once everything was settled. Damien looked back at the familiar space he had become so attached to. Finally, I'm almost there. Somehow, there was a mix of joy and sadness. Suddenly, a voice echoed down the hall. Damien. He was slightly surprised that he had sought him out. Eiffel. He walked up, his eyes blazing with fire. I heard from the coach. Eiffel angrily raised his voice to question him. Why didn't you join the Night Order? With your skills, you're more than qualified. Damien shook his head to express his stance. That place doesn't belong to me. He bit his lower lip to hold back his emotions, lowering his voice to explain, I'm joining the Night Order. I've already received a letter of recommendation from Coach Leon Hart. He already knew, so he just smiled encouragingly. That's a wise choice. You'll definitely do great. That only made Eiffel more frustrated, though there was nothing he could do. You call it wise while you're the one refusing it. You're impossible to read, Damien. He looked up, reminding him seriously, that Neoic unit you registered for. I've heard that place is incredibly dangerous. Take care of yourself. The two gripped each other's hands with determination. Eiffel smiled, promising, we have to meet again. Damien, he curled the corners of his mouth, expressing, thanks, you too. His gaze followed Eiffel's figure as he walked away, thinking to himself, I wonder if he knows that in the distant future, he will become the Grand General of the Baroque Kingdom. Who knows, he might even become stronger than a monster. Regardless, I'm really looking forward to Eiffel's future. Damien turned around with rare excitement. Well then, I guess I'll go say goodbye to the others. By the time he got back to the room, everyone had already finished packing their clothes and belongings. Kyle saw him and rushed over, calling out loudly, Damien! He laughed and teased him. We thought you'd just leave without saying a word. He heard this and sighed, revealing his thoughts. You have to say goodbye when you leave. Who knows when we'll meet again? Suddenly, Kyle laughed, dropping a hint. You'll be seeing me sooner than you think. After that, he turned to everyone and announced loudly, All right, our captain wants to say a final goodbye, so everyone quiet down and pay attention. Damien held his head high, his eyes brimming with joy, and spoke sincerely. You've all worked hard, and thank you for following my lead. Do your best in your new units. Everyone responded in unison, cheering. Thank you for everything, Damien. See you again soon. He nodded in satisfaction and said, I wish you all the best. A while later, Damien had already changed out of his uniform into civilian clothes. Just then, Neil's soft voice sounded nearby. Damien. He paused for a beat before turning to observe her. She offered a radiant smile and greeted him. Long time no see, Damien. I am Neil from The scene shifted to a building in town, where Neil had everything the other party needed prepared. First, Here are the detailed documents on how to utilize your investment. She seriously presented everything. Based on your conditions, I project a return of 3% of net revenue. Damien examined each page with surprise and satisfaction. This is good. I didn't expect her to plan the use of my investment so meticulously. Neil offered a professional smile, saying, "If you have any questions, feel free to ask." He put the documents down and closed the deal. After seeing this, I have no more questions. Proceed with this. Someone will be by later to bring the insurance money under my name. She collected the documents, preparing to move to the next procedure. Understood. And what about the detailed contract? Damien suddenly waved his hand to refuse. That's unnecessary. Contracts are only needed when friction arises between two parties. I trust you will handle everything well. That sudden display of trust also caught Neil by surprise. You really are a very special person. Damien placed a small chest on the table and said, "Please inspect it. This is the investment as promised." As soon as it opened, she couldn't hide her astonishment. Damien, on the table was a chest filled with gleaming gold. Neil was shocked, as the promised investment was 300 gold, but this looked like more than 500. Damien snapped his fingers and explained, "That's just a small token of my appreciation for your hard work." She still hadn't recovered, intending to adjust a few things. Then I must revise the investment amount in the contract. But she was again stopped by him. "It's fine." Deep down, he was satisfied from the start. She had easily looked down on him because of his young age and appearance. But the documents she prepared for him as a true investor were quite impressive. Neil suddenly felt curious about his aspirations. "You just graduated from training, right? That means you're about to be assigned to your unit. Where are you headed?" He calmly shared honestly. "I'm heading west. I've signed up for the Neoic unit near Bronzerian Forest." She went from one surprise to another. "What? The Neoic unit? Don't tell me you volunteered." Damien shrugged, somewhat arrogantly. "Do you think the top student of the class will be forced to go there?" The corners of Damien's mouth curled up as he teased. "Is there a problem? If I end up biting the dust, that investment belongs to the Hamal trading house anyway." Unexpectedly, Neil reminded him very seriously, "Please don't say things like that. I don't like that kind of joke." That made him raise an eyebrow in silent admiration. He thought she was just a gentle woman, but at times like this, she was sharp as a razor. She regained her composure and asked further, "When do you depart?" Damien replied, truthfully, "In 3 days." Only then did Neil stand up and give a promise full of credibility. "Understood. I will use the investment you've entrusted to me as efficiently as possible." Seeing her leave, he breathed a sigh of relief. The investment business is done. Damien was full of excitement, determined to enjoy himself well. "All right, in 3 days I'll be buried in that terrifying forest. For now, until then, I have to eat some good food to my heart's content." So he dove into the pub, downing many mugs of beer refreshingly. Then Damien stopped by a barbecue stall, buying multiple skewers and devouring them. When he got sleepy, he lay down right on the street and had a sound sleep. By the day of departure, Damien held the map and muttered to himself, "I suppose I should head out now." His gaze glanced back to check his supplies. The necessary gear was almost all gathered. Now he just had to go. But suddenly, a strange feeling pressed against his back, making Damien shudder. Why all of a sudden? When he turned, he was extremely stunned to see Kyle. "Why are you here?" Kyle burst in a loud laughter and said, "Didn't I tell you we'd meet again soon?" Damien narrowed his eyes, probing, "Kyle, don't tell me you—" Suddenly Kyle called out directly, "Damien," he declared with clear, determined momentum. "You really think our relationship only stops at being classmates in training camp? I also signed up for the Neoic unit. Damien, let's do a good job together there." "Deal." Kyle walked over, threw his arm around Damien's neck, and urged, "Let's go, shall we?" As the two were slowly about to leave, a voice rang out to stop them. "Wait a second." This one sentence made Kyle jump and look up. "What is it?" Jay walked over, smiling shyly. "Thank goodness, I'm not too late." Kyle blankly stared at the girl in front of him and asked, "What wind blew you here?" Damien was also curious. "What's with this pile of stuff?" She explained, "I heard the Neoic unit is stationed in a very far place, so I prepared this carriage for your trip. Inside are some snacks that last a long time, and a few necessities you might need." Damien was even more puzzled. But why did she have to do this? Recalling his earlier face, she said, "Just to repay the favor you did for me." Jay affirmed that it was just like how he repaid her sincerity. "Damien, our trading house always engraves in our hearts the need for give and take. So, I spent the last 2 days gathering this." She told the two, "Have a safe journey." Kyle was very impressed by the gifted pile of stuff and praised. "She's quite generous." Being praised, Jay scratched her head and replied, "Consider this an investment, since you said I should invest more later." Damien was startled and asked, "What did you say?" He laughed until his stomach hurt, thinking to himself that she was a terrible liar, but she was more interesting than he had thought. He then turned away, not forgetting to leave a promise. "All right, see you later." Jay bowed to respond, "Yes, goodbye, Damien." Both men boarded the departing carriage. Jay stood behind, watching the carriage move away until it disappeared from sight. The journey for Kyle and Damien lasted a few days. Finally, the two could see a town in the distance. Kyle sat in the carriage, groaning in misery. "Damn, why is the road so bumpy? It's turning my insides out." Damien exclaimed, "Walking would probably be more comfortable." He pointed outside and announced, "Anyway, seeing the defense forces at Neoic means we've arrived at Neoic." Kyle wondered why there wasn't a single soul around. Damien leaned his arm against the wall behind him and explained, "Probably because of the monsters, or maybe they're inside Bronzerian Forest. Most of the residents here make a living by going into Bronzerian Forest to pick a type of herb called almondsho. Almondsho is a poisonous plant that causes high fever and diarrhea. But if processed correctly, it becomes the main ingredient for an extremely strong painkiller. Since 60% of the kingdom's almondsho supply comes from Bronzerian Forest, no matter how dangerous it is, the villagers can't quit their jobs." After getting off the carriage, Damien eagerly urged, "Let's get to the base, let's go." The two walked into Neoic, where the streets were deserted and desolate. Kyle frowned and spoke up, "Hey, Damien, don't tell me." He pointed forward and asked, "Is it that building? Are you sure that place is habitable? It looks like it would collapse if you just touched it." Meanwhile, Damien keenly sensed the smell of blood. Not seeing his friend answer, Kyle curiously called out, "Damien," he reminded him, "someone is coming." From far away, a rather large group of people gradually walked toward them. This group didn't seem very strong. Some were even wounded and had to rely on others to support them. And on the shoulder shields of all of them were carved the symbol and the words Neoic. When the group passed Damien, one young man shot a look that was anything but friendly. Then the group disappeared behind the dark door. Kyle looked at them and exclaimed, "Goodness, look at their faces. They look just like wandering ghosts." Damien could only sigh and remind him, "You have to get used to that. Kyle, this is a place where people face life and death every single day." He wondered to himself why he suddenly remembered that matter at this moment. Remembering the past, Damien once stood before a troop and asked, "In your opinion, what is the most important mission of a soldier?" They enthusiastically answered according to their own points of view. "Absolutely follow orders." "Ah, isn't it to destroy the enemy most efficiently, sir? Even if I die, I have to take 20 of them down with me." Damien frowned slightly, showing his disagreement with those points of view. Then he used force to tap a soldier on the head, making him wince in pain. "Why are you tapping my head?" Damien replied, "Because your answer is the worst. Listen carefully. The correct answer is, do not die." He affirmed, "You are forbidden from dying. Never value your own life cheaply. At all costs, you must survive and return. We must become stronger so we don't lose our lives. Is that clear?" Back in the present, Damien sighed and thought to himself, "The faces of those who listened to him back then, I still remember clearly, even though in the end, all of them died." After that, he informed his companion, "Let's go inside too." Kyle asked confusedly, "Right now?" Damien turned to ask, "Did you forget the purpose of us coming here?" "We came here to become stronger. Standing here like statues is just a waste of time." Kyle answered worriedly, "Hey, Damien, you saw their faces just now. The atmosphere inside must be suffocating. Should we wait a little while?" But no matter what was said, Damien didn't stop his steps toward that dark door, leaving Kyle helpless. He fearfully ran after him and called out loudly, "Damien, wait!" At the Neoic unit, Veter angrily threw his sword into the crate and scolded, "Damn it, those bastards in the defense force. They clearly said there were only a few snails, but there were over 30, and they even dragged along an old snail mage. Lao so reported worriedly. Sergeant Karras's arm is now dangling and about to tear off. If he isn't treated immediately, he'll be forced to retire. For members of the Neoic unit sent here as a substitute for severe disciplinary punishment, there is no such thing as the choice to retire. Either rot in prison for the rest of one's life, or struggle in this hell on earth, or be worked to exhaustion at Neoic and thrown away like a dirty rat. Vider felt choked with injustice and screamed, "Damn it, retirement my foot. Being disabled and thrown out into the streets. Are we supposed to eat dirt?" On the captain's side, Tan seemed calmer and spoke up to offer a solution. "First, call a doctor, then try to invite a cleric from the temple." Fabian asked back, "Captain, do you know how much those fanatics charge? Our salaries aren't even enough to cover it." Tan bluntly brought out his money bag and replied, 20 gold coins. "Collect the money." Vider saw that and shouted angrily, "Captain, isn't this money meant for your mother's surgery?" He replied with a bitter smile, "Her condition has improved. The physician said emergency surgery isn't needed yet." The other soldiers heard this and exchanged looks. Everyone understood how much the captain had sacrificed for their unit. Everyone then united and contributed. "Damn it, count my share in, mine too." Diano stuttered and whispered, "I'd like to contribute too." Vider shouted angrily, "Hey, since when does the new kid get to contribute money? Take that money and buy yourself a new pair of boots to replace that torn-up pair, kid." He trembled, his voice sounding like a plea. "Please let me contribute. Sergeant Karras was seriously injured like this because he saved me." Vider saw that and choked up while swearing, "Damn it, what a good kid." Tan then ordered a soldier, "This will take some time, so go call a cleric from the temple first." He quickly ran outside to receive the order. "Yes, boss." Tan turned to ask someone else, "Aaron, how old are you this year?" He answered, "I'm 18, boss." Tan placed his hand on his comrade's shoulder and praised, "Time flies. Our youngest member has been enlisted for a year now. Now, as long as Karras can hold on." Suddenly, someone called from behind his back. "Captain," JY reported, "the new recruits we were told about earlier have arrived." Everyone heard this and cast suspicious glances toward them. I replied, "New recruits? The fighting is so intense, I completely forgot." He called out loudly, "Aaron." He replied, "Yes, boss." Tan threw his arm around the youngest member and announced, "Let's go. It's time to go welcome your juniors." In the office, Tan looked at the two new guys and asked, "Are you the new recruit for this batch?" The two replied in unison, "Yes." He quietly assessed each person. "That kid looks capable. His muscles and strength look pretty decent." When looking at Damien, Tan was a bit hesitant. He asked, "Are you really only 13 years old?" He nodded and answered, "That's right." Tan thought to himself, he's even younger than Aaron. The youngest child on our side is 18. Why would a kid this small volunteer to enlist here? He helplessly put the paper down and whispered, resigned, "I don't understand what the kids these days are thinking." Kyle pointed to Damien and affirmed, "But he is the valedictorian of the training class." Tan heard that and asked blankly, "Valedictorian?" He reminded him gently, "So what?" "The training camp and this place are two completely different worlds." Damien replied, "I know." Seeing the kid's expression, that it was nothing big, made Tan startle and ask, "You know? And you still show your face here?" He then called out loudly, "Aaron." He replied, "Yes, boss." Tan pointed to the two new soldiers and ordered, "You two take them to get their spots and tell them to clean up." Aaron replied, "Understood, boss." He then glanced at the two and announced, "Follow me." Damien and Kyle followed Aaron down the unit hallway. He slowly explained everything. In this Neoic, there are no ranks. Forget titles like platoon leader or company leader. The person earlier was the unit commander, and next to him was the deputy commander. Under them, whoever arrives first is the senior. The order is extremely strict. Stepping into the bedroom, Aaron announced, "Choose whichever bed you like, though you won't be lying in them for long anyway." Kyle curiously asked, "What do you mean?" Aaron answered, "I've been here for a whole year, and I'm still the newest. Understand what that means?" Kyle replied, "How would I know?" Just as he finished speaking, he kicked Kyle hard in the leg. He groaned in pain bending down to clutch his leg. Aaron looked at the two new soldiers with eyes full of hatred mixed with pain and said, "It means," he grated out, "everyone who came after me is already biting the dust." This one sentence made Damien and Kyle freeze without saying a word. Aaron then turned and left the room, not forgetting to remind them, "Worry about unloading your gear and cleaning the barracks first. When you're done, I'll explain the rest." Afterward, Kyle sat down on the bed, while Damien turned to carefully observe the room. He angrily swore. What kind of guy talks like a buzzkill? Seeing Damien didn't look angry at all, he wondered, "And why are you smiling again?" He just nonchalantly replied, "I smile because I want to," Damien whispered. Looks like he still hasn't changed a bit. Afterward, he loudly reminded, "Get to cleaning, Kyle." He wondered, "Are you serious?" Damien picked up a cloth and replied, "Since we have to do it anyway, do it properly. This is our first mission, right?" Damien didn't forget to tease. "Wipe it until it's clean enough to lick." This one sentence made Kyle shout back angrily, "Do I look like a janitor to you?" A while later, at the Neoic unit cafeteria, Aaron sat silently in a corner, thinking to himself that he was afraid. Whenever new comrades joined, he ended up caring for them and becoming close. Remembering that time, he had chatted friendly with new comrades. "Today is your first mission, right? Look closely, today's job is light, so stay in the back." A single minute of negligence is enough to cost you your life. Neoic is exactly that kind of place, because I don't know when it happened, but I've stopped paying attention to new recruits, because sooner or later, they're just going to lose their lives as time passes anyway. But for some reason, these new kids keep bothering me, especially that kid. The look in his eyes, it's like he already knew me. While I was lost in thought, Khajiit called out, "Is that you, Aaron? I finished fixing your shoe soles." I took the shoes and didn't forget to reply, "Thank you, sir." He took the money and chatted, "Hey, I just saw some kids standing blankly in front of the unit gate. Are those the new recruits?" Aaron replied, "You saw them already?" Khajiit asked again. "They look so clueless I thought they were from the Defense Force, but it turns out they're your juniors." I didn't dare answer that question, just bowed my head slightly and replied, "I'll visit again next time." Aaron walked away thinking, "Juniors my foot. I need to crush their arrogance as soon as I get back to the room." Looking at the unit gate appearing before me, Aaron muttered to himself, "Passion, confidence, pride, those things will only get you killed in this place. They wouldn't have just half-assed the cleaning, right?" As I stepped through the door, everything happening made me jump in shock. Damien, with a face smeared with mud and dirt, turned to greet me. "You're back." Everything in the room was blindingly clean. He called out, "Private Aaron." Two others also stepped up and patted Aaron on the shoulder, saying, "We're just as shocked as you are." "Aaron, just how badly did you rough up the new guys?" I stammered in fear. "I didn't do anything. I haven't done anything at all." Damien then carried a basin of water over to report, "We've finished the cleaning as ordered. Please, check if there's anything still not quite right." Aaron looked at the room, clean without a speck of dust, and felt a surge of confusion and anxiety. Usually, when I tell them to clean, they just do a half-hearted job. How could it be this spotless? Or am I just overthinking it? Is this some kind of subtle, putting me in my place tactic? Tan stood behind, laughing loudly and looking incredibly pleased. He praised, "The new recruits are truly top tier. It looks like a newly built barracks." Seeing this expression on Tan made the other soldiers panic. Is the commander laughing? The guy notorious for having no emotions. Tan then seriously called the new recruits over. "Come here for a second," he asked. "Did you two clean this whole mess by hand yourselves?" Both replied in unison, "Yes, sir." He asked curiously, "Why did you have to clean this thoroughly? Just leaving it mostly empty would have been fine." Damien replied sternly, "That was Senior Aaron's order. We just carried it out strictly because it was a command from a superior." Hearing that, Tan looked deep into the young soldier's eyes and thought, "Having spent years on the battlefield on the thin line between life and death, I only need one look to know someone's true ability. That big guy just needs a little more training, and he could be thrown right into the heat of battle. But I can't read this kid at all. Why would a valedictorian from the training camp throw himself into this miserable place? There must be some hidden motive for him to volunteer to come here." But before getting to the bottom of that, Tan gave an order. "Everyone listen up." Everyone looked over, curious about what the order would be this time. But contrary to the stern tone of his voice, Tan smiled and announced, "From today on, these two are the youngest in our unit. Give them a warm welcome." Damien and Kyle smiled happily at each other. This was a well-deserved reward for their serious and dedicated attitude. Aaron lay on the wooden bunk with Damien. He asked, "Damien, when do you think this war will end? Will it ever be over?" Hearing that, he fell silent, his gaze dropping as he calmly replied, "The war ends when we surrender. That's all." Suddenly, Aaron closed his eyes, his voice becoming resolute. "Damien, you absolutely cannot die before me. Got it?" Damien turned to look at him with a probing gaze. "Did you eat something weird today? Why are you being so sappy all of a sudden?" Aaron laughed off the response. "I just felt like saying it. Promise me. Did you hear me?" Into memory. Damien sighed with longing and thought to himself, "Back then, I didn't even bother answering him. But in the end, I kept my promise." He remembered the memory of standing before Aaron's corpse. Damien's eyes filled with bloodshot veins from pure rage. He rushed into the battlefield alone, cutting down dozens of enemy soldiers because in the end, I outlived that guy. Damien's gaze was filled with sorrow as he recalled that image. Damn it. He sat up, put his hand to his forehead, and thought, "I can't fall back asleep anyway. I might as well practice the mana accumulation method." Damien quickly changed into his training gear and stepped outside. After heading deep into the forest, he saw the silhouette of someone stealthily training. Damien wondered suspiciously, who's training at this hour? The silhouette of Aaron was practicing swordsmanship under the soft moonlight. "It's Aaron." He stood to the side, observing carefully without making a sound. He marveled to himself. Even in his past life, he was a training fanatic, but Damien watched him leaning on his sword, panting heavily, and wondered, why does he use his sword like that? That style completely clashes with his greatest strength, speed. Damien sighed helplessly, thinking, right, in my past life it took so much effort to convince him to change weapons. If I jumped in and told him now, he'd probably punch me, even though he wouldn't be able to lay a finger on me. He turned around and left quietly, not wanting to disturb Aaron's hard practice. It took too much effort to build a little rapport. Let's not blow it early. There'll be a better opportunity to say something later anyway. Flash forward to the next morning. Everyone gathered beneath the massive mountains. They looked around and grumbled, "Oh man, I dread seeing this training ground. Looks like we're about to have our bodies pulverized today." VLN turned to the soldiers nearby and started making bets. Waiting for the captain is boring. Want to make a bet? Let's bet on whether these two new recruits last until the end of today's training. The whole crowd buzzed and started joining in the bet. I'll bet 10 silver they can't even crawl through the morning session. I bet 20 silver they pass out as soon as the morning shift ends. I'm in too. Kyle and Damien took it all in. He grumbled in annoyance. What are those guys doing? Are they using us for their gambling games? Have some decency. He watched them happily betting with each other, thinking they must be used to doing this, and nobody was even standing up to stop it. The atmosphere of this unit is truly... Damien suddenly turned around and walked forward. Kyle followed him, asking suspiciously, "Damien, where are you going?" Suddenly, he stepped up to the group and asked, causing the whole crowd to go silent. "Mind if I join in? Looks like fun." The guys were startled. VLN laughed mockingly and spoke loudly. "Scared the hell out of me." Others followed suit, jeering. The main character walked right into the trap himself? Did the new kid bring any money? Damien's face remained incredibly calm as he replied, as if it were natural. "I did. But I want to change the betting conditions a little bit." With an expression of absolute confidence, he took out a shining gold coin. "I bet that in today's training, I will surpass everyone here, even your captain, to take the #1 spot. I'm putting down 1 goal." The expressions of the men darkened as they stared at Damien. He confidently put his hands on his hips and said, "Do you want to add any other conditions?" The corners of their mouths curled into a wicked, devious smile. They started shouting and jeering. "This new brat's got guts, huh?" One guy pointed at the coin. "Fine, if you win, take all this money." VLN was extremely excited, clenched his fist, and set the condition. "But if you lose, you have to do all our laundry for a month." One guy in the group taunted, "If you aren't confident, just quit now, kid." Damien's face remained calm, and he continued, "Since we're going big with a gold coin and a laundry bet, I'd like to add one condition of my own." Lin found it interesting and asked suspiciously, "Another condition? Let's hear it." Damien's face darkened, and he said softly, "If I win, give me full permission to rest during all scheduled training for a month." But the man was stunned, not expecting this. What? Skip training? That sounds absolutely insane. Suddenly, Tan appeared from nowhere and agreed. "Fine, you're on." The others were startled and turned around. "Captain!" He turned toward Aaron, who was standing on the other side, and called out loudly, "Aaron!" Aaron answered suspiciously, "Yes, sir." He smiled happily and pointed at the group that had been pulling them in. "You joined this bet too?" Aaron asked suspiciously. "Me?" He cut him off, provoking him. "What's wrong? Scared of losing to your juniors?" Aaron shook his head, his face hardening. "Never, sir. I just don't want to waste money on a bet where I already know the result." Tan seemed satisfied, tossed over a silver coin, and acted generously. "Then I'll pay your bet for you." He walked in front of Damien, his figure twice as tall as the boys, and said, "New recruit, if you perform better than your seniors, I'll grant you that free time you want." During training, Tan turned to the instigators and warned, "But if any of you lose, I'm throwing you into an intensified hell training course, so you'd better use all your strength." They heard that and turned grim with anger. "Arrogant brat. I gotta teach him some manners. Better train like your life depends on it, kid." Damien bowed, looking cautious, but he was feeling great inside. "Everything is going according to plan. I really needed some free time." He watched everyone focusing on warming up and calculated. "Even if I have to use this method, I have to change the pathetic atmosphere of this unit. A place where everyone is given up because they don't know when they'll die, living a driftless life without hope, will sooner or later consume not just you, but everyone around." Tan crossed his arms and looked down, speaking sternly. "All right, let's start the physical training." He turned and pointed to the pile of large logs nearby, starting to instruct. "Today's exercise is to carry these logs while running straight to the top of that rocky mountain." Everyone heard that and grumbled in protest. "Captain, we don't usually do this crazy exercise. Let the recruits do it if they want. Why do we have to suffer too?" Tan shouted angrily, veins bulging, causing the crowd to fall silent. "Silence. Pick them up now, stop whining and move." They quickly hoisted the logs onto the mountain. Everyone was exhausted. Vielin's group was also struggling, sweating buckets. He looked at Tan, who was standing on the cliff observing them, and groaned. Why did the captain suddenly come up with this exercise? Who knows? They struggled to climb while grumbling angrily. This is clearly the new kid's fault. It's their first time doing this. They'll surely collapse in a heartbeat. Vielin heard that and looked down to find Damien. What the hell? Where's the new brat? His face filled with fear and shock as he looked up. No way. Damien had already left them far behind. How in the world did he crawl up there already? He was also breathless, gasping for air. He looked at his ring and marveled inwardly. I didn't expect it to even reduce the weight of the objects I'm holding. Damien smiled satisfactorily. A precise decision. When choosing this ring, he looked down the mountain to find the others and see where his seniors were. Damien saw the person leading below was still far away, thinking they'd have a long way to go before catching up. The only one trying to keep up was Aaron, staring at the person trying hard to catch up with him so surely it could only be Aaron. He was carrying the log while breathing long, weary breaths. Aaron's gaze stared upwards, sweating profusely. He's almost there. He looked at Damien's happy, waiting face and muttered, I thought he was just at the valedictorian level of his training class. But this is truly incredible. After a while, his first steps reached the mountaintop. Damien planted his log on the ground, supremely confident. Number 1. Total domination. Tan waited above, quite surprised inside. He actually finished first. He watched the second person arrive and marveled. I didn't expect even Aaron to bite the dust. Seems like we just caught a bigger fish than I thought. After a moment, some others reached the peak. Tan turned to those who hadn't arrived yet and shouted, Training over. His face darkened, and his voice made the whole crowd tremble as they had agreed the losers would receive hell training. Everyone who arrived after the recruit, lie down now. Suddenly, Villain rushed over with a panicked look, calling out and making him suspicious. "Captain!" He spoke with a panicked and fearful face, his voice urgent as he looked toward the unit building. Tom looked in the direction he pointed, his eyes widening in horror. A red flag was fluttering at the distant barracks. The whole group panicked. "That's the red flag for a level 1 emergency alert." As soon as he finished, Damien walked over, gasping for breath, and suggested, "We want to come along too." Ton turned around and refused immediately. No. No matter how good your training performance is, the actual battlefield is completely different. You two stay in the barracks. His face was full of seriousness and determination. Damien stands by his opinion. We will just follow along as porters for supplies behind the lines. During the physical test earlier, you saw our strength and endurance, didn't you? Kyle added, "We will definitely do a good job." He didn't answer immediately, but looked down, thinking, "It's so embarrassing. Now we have to rely on the strength of the new recruits." After a while, Ton turned and left one sentence. "Fine, as long as you don't join the fight. Take the spare equipment and wait in the back." Aaron shouted his order. "Understood." Having received permission, Damien looked at Kyle. "Bronzerian Forest? If I remember correctly, this is exactly when Aaron," he said expressionlessly. "There is a demon in the Bronzerian Forest." He leaned his cane on the ground, wiping the sweat off his face, looking somewhat skeptical. "A demon? What kind of insane nonsense is that?" Kyle started panicking. "That's not a normal monster. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. A possessed snail beat a steel wolf to death. Usually, it takes 5 snails charging in to even stand a chance. It was because of that creature that we were forced to abandon that land. If not for that monster, the Neoic unit wouldn't have been disbanded." Damien grimaced and rubbed his head. "Damn it, the information is all jumbled up. I can't piece it together. In that case, even if I have to be a gopher, I have to go there and check it out myself." After preparations, Ton shouted to everyone above, "Is your gear ready?" Everyone replied in unison, "Yes, sir." He started giving advice. "I'll say it again. Once you step into battle, you have to calculate every possible situation. If you see something dangerous, it's best to avoid it. Your top priority is to keep your life and make it back." "Clear." Everyone shouted, "Yes, Captain." Once the preparations were done, Ton made his decision. "Let's move out." Behind him, he followed the group, thinking, finally, the first real battle is coming. Moving for a while, everyone stepped into the forest. He walked and assigned tasks. "We'll search the surrounding area first, split into teams of 3, but absolutely do not leave each other's sight." Ton glanced at Damien and Kyle. "You two follow me, don't fall behind." He replied, "Yes, sir." He nodded, "I understand." Meanwhile, Damien looked around, assessing the situation. "Entering the prohibited area from here? There's nothing too special about this forest. How the hell could something be here?" His eyebrows knitted tightly as if he'd discovered something. "It smells like killing in tin again, just like on the battlefield." Thanks to 5 years spent on the line between life and death on the battlefield, from the moment he stepped in, every sense in his body was screaming in warning. Damien gripped his weapon and told himself, "This place is extremely dangerous." Just as he escaped his thoughts, a sound suddenly echoed, drawing everyone's attention. Ton quickly glanced toward the sound. "Did you find something?" Viet shouted loudly to report. "Captain, over here." When they ran over, the scene before them was stained red. It was horrific. John stood nearby, cautious, and gave his opinion. The scouts checked it. "So why is the weaponry left perfectly intact?" Ton sat down to observe closely. "That proves how terrified they must have been at that moment." Speaking, he looked into a corner. What kind of monster could cause this horrific scene? Uncle placed his sword on his shoulder and speculated. "Captain, could it be a bear-type monster?" Ton rebutted immediately. "There is no mutated bear in this forest that could do this." John nervously continued. "Then could it be?" He finished his sentence only to be interrupted. "I don't think so, sir." Uncle looked confused in the direction Damien was standing. When observing closely the thing at his feet, he suddenly shouted, "Isn't that the carcass of a red bear?" Damien confirmed. Just as the vice captain said, the culprit is likely a bear-like creature. Looking at those scratch marks, The size of its front paw must be truly enormous. Then he pointed to a distant tree. That's the only way to explain the wounds on that carcass. Tan put his hand to his chin, deep in analysis. Correct, a very sound argument. He asked somewhat curiously, "Where did you learn all this?" He shared seriously. "My father was a hunter, sir. Though I'm not specialized in forestry, I picked up a few things." Tan nodded. "I see. That's useful knowledge." Kyle stood behind, hearing the whole story, looking a bit confused. "Damien, didn't you say before that your dad was a soldier?" Before he could finish questioning, Damien glanced at him with an icy expression, warning him to shut up. Time passed, and Tan made a decision. "That's it for today. Retreat. Collect the bodies carefully. We have to return them to their families." Watching the people working together to clean up, Damien agreed. Indeed, if they tried to push deeper now, it would be no different than being suicidal. They'd only grasped a few clues, and the opponent's trail was still a mystery. He smiled slightly and sighed with relief. He's cold on the outside, but an excellent commander. No wonder people in that era respected such a wonderful person. Tan stood to the side, seriously urging the group. "Let's pull back. Hurry up." At that exact moment, Damien was startled to discover something unusual. He shouted loudly at the group, "Everyone, get out of the way now." As he spoke, a massive rock, from nowhere, crashed straight down, emitting a thunderous sound. Many subordinates couldn't dodge in time and were crushed underneath. The space was in utter chaos. "My legs!" Someone's face turned pale. "Where did this giant boulder even fall from?" Damien quickly turned back and called out, "Kyle." He accelerated and ran over, using all his strength to lift the rock off their comrades. He also quickly stepped in to help, gritting his teeth hard to push the boulder away. After a moment of struggle, it was finally lifted. Tan saw the chance and seized it. He used his hands to pull each person out. "Hurry up. Everyone, come and help save our comrades. Quickly." Those who were pinned down trembled as the people outside pulled them out. Tan squatted down and inspected them. "Damn it, this condition is terrible." Damien, standing nearby, rummaged through his pack. "Chew this." He took out a herb and seriously instructed, "You have to chew it for a long time to swallow the extract. That way, the pain will ease up." He was startled and reached out to stop Damien. Sleeping grass might have pain-killing properties, but it's toxic. Swallowing it directly without an antidote is... He didn't change his expression as he explained, "If eaten together with these thistle seeds, it can neutralize the toxicity. While you're still conscious, try to chew as much as you can." Finally, Tan stopped interfering. He fell into deep thought. How does this brat know all these things? After giving the painkiller to his comrades, he suggested, "Captain, we must retreat immediately. That rock definitely didn't fall on its own. The culprit is clearly nearby." Just as he finished speaking, the sight before them stunned both Damien and Tan. A monster. Looking at the giant bear in front of them, he couldn't help but blurt out, "This is insane. What on earth is that?" Following that, it decisively struck his body hard. Under the immense force, both the axe and Hyo-sun's body flew a distance away. He fell to the ground with a thud, gasping for air as he looked at the frenzied beast in front of him. Next, it stepped closer, raising its sharp claws high once again. The beast struck down hard, causing the ground beneath it to shatter into pieces. Watching from start to finish, Tan couldn't help but grit his teeth and curse, "You damn monster." He glanced at a corner, secretly assessing. 3 comrades had already fallen. Today, I must take the life of this beast. Tan regained his focus, looked straight at the beast, and ordered, "Attack now." Aim all sharp blades straight at it. He roared again, "Damn it, keep stabbing until you puncture it." Seeing that Damien and his companion intended to move forward, a soldier stood right in front of them to block their path. "New recruits, get back." Seizing the moment, Tan turned back. "Aaron." He swung his sword, gathering momentum from a distance. The captain delivered a powerful slash, severing the beast's legs in the blink of an eye. It opened its mouth, roaring in insane agony. After losing a leg, it couldn't stand firm and collapsed right in front of Tan. He brought his sword tip to its brow, his eyebrows knitted tightly, and declared, "It's over." The wild beast felt the energy radiating outward. Damien was a bit stunned. "Mana?" On this side, Ton leapt into midair with his sword raised. Die. A finishing slash cut across the beast's body in an instant. After it was all over, a soldier stomped on its body, the corners of his mouth twitching with excitement. As expected, just overwhelming it with brute force always works. A person next to him added, "Serves you right, you Phil." Ton reached out toward the beast, silently assessing it. No idea where this plague-bearing creature crawled out from. Furthermore, as he parted its thick fur, he discovered something unusual. These spots, Hio-sun asked worriedly. Could it be contagious? Usually, people with infectious diseases get spots exactly like this. Damien, standing in a corner, witnessed this and his eyes widened. It really is those spots. He walked step by step toward the beast's carcass. To suddenly appear here, there's only one way such a freakish creature could exist. We must immediately investigate where this monster originated. Ton didn't waste any more time and quickly assigned tasks. Aaron, take the men and guard the perimeter. Bojin, skin this thing and bring it back for armor. He spoke up, interrupting immediately. I don't think its hide can be used, sir. He asked, confused. What? Why is that? Ton was slightly startled. He pursed his lips and stared at Damien. Observing the look on the boy's face, he concluded. As expected, this kid knows something. He made a decision once again. Leave the hide. The whole team retreat. And also, that new recruit over there. Come follow me right now. After returning to headquarters, Ton met Damien in a private room. Sit down. He nodded slightly. Yes, sir. Ton's face was serious as he looked straight at Damien and asked, Do you know anything about the spotted monster we saw in the forest? He was silent for a moment before deciding to speak his mind. For what I can see, there's a high chance it was infected with demonic energy. He suddenly blurted out, Demonic energy? That evil energy dark mages often use. Damien confirmed, Yes, that's correct. Ton asked tensely, Does that mean there's a dark mage hiding in the forest? You must know that dark magic is strictly forbidden, right? He lowered his eyes and shook his head in denial. For now, I can't confirm it exactly. It could be a dark mage, or it could be a dark artifact accumulating demonic energy there. Demonic energy is a power borrowed from worship and demonic sacrifices. Anyone eroded by this energy over time will only meet a tragic end. Damien frowned slightly, thinking Bronzerian Forest was originally a place where mana stones infected with demonic energy existed, but didn't it only start to take effect in this era? The existence of that mana stone was only known to the world after a catastrophe shook the Empire in the next life. The Neoic unit discovered the demon-possessed monster in Bronzerian Forest. The Imperial Army formed a subjugation team and entered the forest to eliminate it. A possibility suddenly popped into his head. What if everything was only just beginning at this point? Demonic energy, if left alone, will assimilate and mutate more monsters, making them stronger. Therefore, if I act before its power expands, I can destroy it. Ton sighed in frustration. How are you so knowledgeable about these things? He shared honestly, my father told me about it. He encountered a similar case before. He seriously made a request. I want to hear more details about that. Saying that, Ton fell into deep thought, because our current situation is like drowning men grabbing at a straw. Damien didn't hesitate to agree. Yes, Captain. On this side, a groan suddenly rang out. Oh man, my whole body is aching. A man held his head gloomily. Yesterday's mission exhausted me. On the other bed, Damien picked up a pillow to remind him. Kyle, get up, big guy. He grimaced. I know. At that moment, Violin kicked the door open with news. Big trouble, guys. I heard Bronzerian Forest has been sealed off. Starting today, not only the herbalists, but even us are forbidden from entry. So, we don't have to go on missions for a while, just stay at home and train. Kyle clenched his fists in excitement. Awesome. It's a blessing from the sky. Eiffel nodded in agreement. We have so many injuries anyway. Taking this time to rest and recharge is perfect. Seeing Damien sigh, he asked, Damien, why is your face so long? Aren't you happy, kid? He replied sadly, Oh, it's nothing. Getting a break is great, isn't it? After replying, Damien covered his face with his hands, thinking, given the unit's current situation, this is indeed a golden time to recover. But why right at this moment? Suddenly, a series of footsteps outside the hallway caught Kyle's attention. Someone poked their head out to eavesdrop. Who are those guys? Why are the Defense Force guys here? Why did those lazy bums come over here? On this side, John had sat with his arms crossed in the middle of the room without expression. Opposite him, Tan asked vigilantly, "What business do you have stopping by here?" He shared seriously, "Thanks to your timely report, the Magic Court has agreed to lend a hand." They said they truly sensed the pungent, demonic aura from that monster's carcass. He pursed his lips and pondered. It turns out what that kid Damien said was all accurate. Could Bronzerian Forest really be connected to demonic energy? Speaking further, John shook his head, but nothing is certain yet. That's why they sent a priest to coordinate with us in a suite. His suggestion made Tom look a bit grim. This situation is quite new, so I want to bring along a soldier who understands demonic energy. He immediately came up with a reason to refuse. That guy is a new recruit who just arrived at the unit. Bringing someone with zero combat experience along? I'm afraid. Before he could finish, John interrupted. But ultimately, wasn't he the one who spotted the problem first? Hearing that, Tan hesitated. He worried about that. Indeed, if I refuse this offer, he'll surely find an excuse to make things difficult for the unit later. Finally, Tan made a decision. He glanced over and called, "Aaron." He answered immediately, "Yes, sir." On this side, while Damien was feeling down, a voice spoke up, "Just call that Damien kid here for me." The scene opened with the massive, sturdy walls of a majestic military fortress. The glorious atmosphere of the kingdom weighed heavily over the entire space. The perspective quickly shifted inside, where Damien, the red-haired recruit, was leisurely walking into the magnificent command center. His simple, armorless clothing immediately drew surprised stares from the heavily armed guards standing by. Damien approached the giant wooden table and stood opposite the veteran commander who had been through countless battles. The old general solemnly began to outline a new, arduous mission, while emphasizing that the recruit had every right to refuse. However, without a second of hesitation, Damien eagerly accepted. Beneath his enthusiastic expression, a cold, calculated glint flashed in his eyes. He knew clearly that accepting this dangerous mission was the best opportunity to hunt down the horrific monster polluted by demonic energy. Seeing the teenager so unusually enthusiastic, the veteran commander was momentarily surprised, but finally agreed, scheduled the mission, and dismissed Damien. The scene shifted to the dusty ground just outside the fortress gate. Still uneasy about his reckless confidence, the commander called Damien back one last time. He urgently suggested sending an escort team of veteran soldiers to go with him. On his lips was a calm smile that radiated authority. Damien coldly rejected the support. Internally, he calculated that dragging along a slow group of old soldiers would only cause his rapid escape plan to fail if the mission went south. The commander sighed heavily, his face darkened, and he issued a firm order. Regardless, the recruit is not allowed to join the battle. Damien pretended to be naive, gently brushing off the serious warning, promising with a happy smile that he would only go to pick some medicinal herbs to boost the team's strength and return unscathed. Afterward, he confidently strode toward the dangerous, deserted forest. Left behind in the dust, the commander and vice commander could only stare blankly at the teenager's back, muttering in amazement at the appearance of an irregular factor so unpredictable it was insane. The scene immediately shifted to the peripheral area of the Bronzerian forest, covered in eerie fog. A powerful armed battalion was marching deep into the dangerous woods. This extremely strong formation was specially assembled to hunt down a forbidden dark mage. Standing at the vanguard was the stern air guard Captain Basil and the mysterious Adelant temple priestess, Clare. The tense, silent march was suddenly broken when Captain Basil spotted Damien, the red-haired recruit, loitering nearby. The veteran captain immediately confronted him sharply, demanding immediate obedience. But Damien coldly blocked him. With a disdainful smile, the young soldier completely disregarded the captain's authority, casually saying that since the two belonged to different units, his rank meant nothing. Leaving the captain trembling with rage and stunned behind, Damien strolled forward with a terrifying air of arrogance. Witnessing the strange and disrespectful confrontation, the priestess Clare immediately took notice of the bold recruit. When the enraged captain revealed that this very teenager was the first to sound the alarm about the presence of demonic energy in the region, Clare's golden eyes narrowed immediately, her sharp gaze full of scrutiny. The priestess slid close to Damien, almost pressing against him, quietly demanding an explanation for his unusual and questionable knowledge of dark magic. For a moment, a flash of cold alertness crossed Damien's face as he wondered internally whether this perceptive priestess had seen through his disguise. Quickly hiding his defensiveness, Damien confidently concocted a perfect story. He calmly said that his knowledge of the dark arts was passed down by his late father, gently dispelling her suspicions. He even vividly recounted the horror of inspecting the body of a shredded monster with the priestess. Based on extensive knowledge of local wildlife, Damien painted a horrifying picture of a beast species completely foreign to the forest. It was a giant shadow monster brutally mutated by demonic energy. Its flesh was rotting with putrid black spots, its blood-red eyes burning with killing intent. The priestess accepted the explanation about Damien's late father and nodded slightly, ending the questioning. As the tense atmosphere settled, Captain Basil loudly ordered the entire unit to continue pushing deeper into the forest, demanding that everyone remain highly alert to anything unusual. Amidst the heavy footsteps echoing throughout the forest, Damien quietly broke away from the formation. He thought regular soldiers could handle the basic scouting, while he needed to go deeper to reach his true target. Suddenly, a soldier spotted Damien squatting in the bushes and yelled in panic that there was a monster. Weapons were immediately drawn, but the panic quickly turned to annoyance when everyone realized Damien was only happily digging for a type of rare mana-restoring root. Feeling embarrassed, the soldiers shamefully scolded the recruit, asking if he thought he was on a picnic in the woods. Damien's naive face immediately vanished. He glared at the shouting soldier with an icy, deadly, and calm gaze, warning that if he kept yapping, he would soon be in his grave. He calmly reminded them that searching was their mission, not his. When a soldier complained about being startled, Damien cruelly mocked their cowardly reaction. He pointed out that if just a rustling bush made them tremble like this, their pathetic level was staining the honor of the entire unit. Before the enraged soldier could react, Captain Basil stepped in, ending the quarrel. He sternly reprimanded Damien for his impulsive action, warning him not to do anything that would affect the mission. Damien pretended to obediently agree to stay within his assigned area. The captain sighed wearily, turned his back on the headache-inducing recruit, and ordered his subordinates to shed their heavy gear to conduct a thorough sweep. The quiet search was suddenly broken when the bushes shook violently. A crowd of burning red eyes peered through the dark foliage. Cries to prepare for battle rang out across the unit as a giant herd of monsters burst out from the edge of the woods. Initially, the veteran soldiers were arrogant, assuming it was just an ordinary herd of wild orcs that would be easy to wipe out. But the smug smile on their faces immediately faded when they got a clearer look. A soldier froze in horror upon discovering the diseased black spots and glowing red eyes on the monsters' bodies. The horrifying truth gradually emerged. These were not ordinary monsters, but orcs twisted by demonic energy into brutal beasts. With an earth-shattering roar, a giant, corrupted monster lunged straight at the front line. With terrifying and abnormal speed, it closed the distance before anyone could react. A heavy greatsword swung down at the motionless soldier. Everyone screamed for him to fall back, but it was too late. The panicked soldier froze, preparing to meet a tragic death upon realizing the attack was too fast to dodge. However, that lethal strike never landed. A sharp metallic clash echoed through the forest as the attack was perfectly blocked. The trembling soldier looked up in astonishment, only to see Damien, the red-haired recruit, standing firm in a perfect defensive stance. Holding his spear tightly, Damien sternly shouted at the panicked soldier to wake up. A sharp aura flared around him as the cold teenager asked the veteran soldier how much longer he intended to stay in the unit's honor. The scene opened in a dense clearing. A disciplined squad quickly arranged themselves into a V-shaped defensive formation to block the oncoming threat. Facing the impending ambush, the experienced Captain Vasil quickly organized the team, specifically designating 3 soldiers to form a tight protective ring around the white-cloaked priestess Clare. Watching from the outside, Damien silently acknowledged Vasil's calmness and extensive battlefield experience. The tension was violently broken when a giant herd of red-eyed orcs stormed the human front line. The monstrous brute strength of the herd immediately crushed the defense, throwing soldiers backward and putting Clare in extreme danger. Triggered by the priestess's natural divine aura, the frenzied orcs locked their targets onto Clare and lunged with the intent to kill. Facing the scythe of death rushing toward her, Clare desperately clasped her hands in prayer, closing her eyes tightly to summon magic. A blinding, brilliant explosion of divine power erupted from her body, spreading across the battlefield and causing the advancing monsters immense pain. However, despite the divine intervention, Damien witnessed a harsh reality. The defense was collapsing, and if the battle continued at this pace, the entire unit would be slaughtered. Even though he had been strictly ordered by Vasil not to join the fight, Damien realized he had no choice but to break the rules. Tightening his grip on his weapon, Damien surged forward. His body left a fierce, purple aura as he leapt into the air above the fray. Landing with terrifying speed, he performed a fluid, extremely brutal slash, simultaneously decapitating 2 giant orcs. The 2 giant monsters collapsed to the forest floor without a sound, leaving a nearby wounded soldier wide-eyed in astonishment at the terrifying lethality. After landing from the lethal strike, Damien looked straight at the soldier guarding the priestess and issued a sharp command: abandon the current position to support the front line. Although momentarily hesitant, the soldier quickly followed Damien's powerful authority, immediately running back to the battlefield, leaving the young wounded spearman to take on the sole role of protecting Clare. Turning to the priestess, Damien saw that Clare was completely paralyzed with terror. Her eyes were wide, and her body was shaking violently at the sight of the bloody slaughter surrounding her. Realizing she was in deep shock and that the magical explosion earlier was only a blind reaction of panic, Damien firmly grabbed her shoulders and shook her hard to pull her back to reality. He forced her to look past her own fear, pointing straight to the center of the fray where the soldiers were being pushed to their limits. He sternly told her to gather all her divine power and unleash it onto the battlefield. Swallowing her terror, Clare resolutely nodded, knelt down, and gripped her holy staff with both hands to focus her magic. As she immersed herself in deep, desperate prayer, a ring of sacred fire erupted from the ground around her. The immense power of the magic exploded into a blinding beam of holy light like a star, causing Damien to watch in awe. He realized he had seriously underestimated her. This was no ordinary magic, but the terrifying, destructive power of a high-level priestess. The cleansing light descended upon the orc herd like a tsunami, blinding the monsters and leaving them in a state of helpless, writhing pain. Recognizing the miraculous opportunity, the soldiers, despite their wounds, immediately regrouped and launched a bloody counterattack with earth-shaking roars. They brutally hacked and killed the motionless monsters, reversing the tide of battle in the blink of an eye. The heavy thud of a severed orc head rolling to a stop on the blood-soaked grass finally signaled the end of the fierce clash. The surviving soldiers, though exhausted and full of wounds, stood among the corpses in a state of both amazement and relief. Wiping sweat and grime from his exhausted face, Captain Vasil immediately turned his attention to the harsh reality after the battle, ordering a quick casualty count. A heavy, tragic silence enveloped the veteran commander when he learned 8 of his men had sacrificed their lives. He ordered the recovery of the bodies carefully and solemnly, leaving no one behind in the deep forest. Seeking tactical input, Vasil approached Clare and asked if they needed to push deeper into the forest to eliminate the source. The priestess firmly rejected that intention. She knelt beside the giant carcass of a dead monster, observing the unusual aura leaking from its flesh. She coldly revealed that the herd had been completely corrupted by demonic energy, proving that this forest was heavily polluted and a much darker, more horrific threat was simmering in the deepest, darkest corners. Realizing the scale of the danger, Vasil declared they must retreat immediately, report officially on the appearance of demonic energy, and assemble a large-scale subjugation force. Hearing the plan change drastically, Damien couldn't hide his cold, knowing smile. Internally, he calculated that a large-scale holy war against demonic forces would put his Neoic unit straight on the front lines of the upcoming conflict. His inner calculation was interrupted when the soldier he had just saved approached, trembling to express his profound gratitude. Maintaining a humble attitude, the young wounded warrior gently brushed off the thanks, pretending as if the lethal intervention earlier was just a reflexive moment. When the immediate threat was resolved, Damien knelt on the blood-stained grass, quietly picking handfuls of fresh green herbs and stuffing them into his pack. Internally, he lamented how much effort it took to pick them for the unit. Securing the heavy pack, Damien approached the veteran captain. Interrupting the commander's line of thought, he bluntly demanded that Vasil take action to crush the local Urkel herbalist crowd. The experienced commander could only stare in astonishment at the sudden, bizarre request. Without leaving a gap, Damien enthusiastically poured out his frustration. Merchants in the city were shamelessly price-gouging medicine by 5 times, draining his hard-earned hazard pay. He firmly pressed the heavy bag of herbs into Vasil's chest, resolutely demanding that the captain use these fresh herbs to treat the injured soldiers, bypassing that exorbitant price. Captain Vasil's initial surprise quickly turned into deep, sincere gratitude. He looked at the young warrior and seriously thanked him for his life-saving contribution. Immediately returning to his heavy duties, Vasil loudly ordered the whole team to begin a full retreat, gathering bodies and caring for the wounded with care. While the exhausted army was rushing to execute the withdrawal order, Damien leisurely walked away from the battlefield, spear still held firmly in his hand. Watching his back as he left, Clare remained completely silent, but on her veiled face, a gentle, warm smile finally bloomed. The previous terror had been completely replaced by deep and gentle curiosity.